I'm going to call Personnel and Human Services to order at 6:49. So tonight we have one quick thing to do. It's to introduce a member of the Municipal Building Commission to the council. We appointed him and voted last week, but we didn't have an opportunity to meet Ron, so I invited Ron through Linda to come before us tonight. So Ron, come right up. Tell us your name, address, and your interest and your background.
All right, my name is Ron Monroe, 5 O'Donnell Drive in Attleboro. So my interest came from the new high school building. I've spent the last 3 years at a public accounting firm working a practice specifically in construction audit. So I've been following the process a little bit and gained some interest and thought maybe my background could be some help. I've done a lot of work with the contractor. I think I could bring a lot of value and information to the project, and anything else construction related or general accounting.
Great. Any questions? Councilor Conti.
Ron, thank you for coming in. Did I just hear you say that you've done work with the contractor?
Yes.
So that contractor is?
Skanska.
Skanska, which is an enormous, enormous organization.
Right.
Have you had any business relations with the group that we are working with?
I'm sorry. What?
Skanska is a worldwide organization.
Right.
With scores of thousands of employees.
They are.
And we are engaged in one small little team of about 15 people, maybe 20.
Yep.
Have you had any business relations with any of those people?
I don't know who the people might be.
Oh, okay.
I don't know the specifics to the Skanska employees that you're working with.
And exactly what was the type of work that you were doing for Skanska?
I didn't work for Skanska. I work for the accounting firm that audited several projects that Skanska has done.
So did you work on auditing any of the projects done by Skanska?
Many.
You did?
Yes.
And were those projects municipal projects?
No municipal projects, no.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? See, it was painless, right?
Yep. To answer your question further, I do have municipal project experience with other contractors.
If I may?
Yes, sir.
So, Ron, I'm intrigued by this because municipal relations with the design firm and with the state are very complex. And your expertise in the accounting world is exactly where it gets complicated. Mm-hmm. In working on municipal projects, have you worked on municipal projects that were state grant funded?
Yes.
And were they fully funded or partially funded?
Partially.
And were you familiar with the conditions that qualify them for funding and not funding?
Yes, to a certain degree in the sense of how it was accounted for, not necessarily to the full extent of what qualifies as funding and what does not.
So these were capital improvement projects?
Correct.
And you were looking at the exemptions in the contract, is that correct?
Correct.
And when those projects were started, were those exemptions made clear to the municipality?
At times. It varies with every project. As you said, it's a very complex process. It also depends on, in my experience, where we got involved in the project. Oftentimes, my firm was involved halfway through, at the end, at the very beginning. We did a lot of work in the context of putting the contracts together for certain projects, and others we kind of ran off the projects or the contracts that were already put together. So I can't really answer your question specifically. It's more of a loaded question, if you know what I mean.
So let's see if we can try to get the public to try to understand exactly what it was that you were doing. When you were working for the firm and you were working on a municipal capital improvement projects, you were working on projects that had exemptions of items that would not be funded by the state granting authority.
Right.
And in your role, how did you interact with those?
So our interaction was mostly how it was accounted for on the schedule of values within the project. But when it came to the exemptions for the state funding, that was mostly held to the ownership, say the city that was building the school, for example. So we weren't hired necessarily to come in and audit what was and what was not funded by the state. However, it's something we looked at and made suggestions, but that wasn't our priority. It was mostly what we do is tracking the finances of the project and making sure it was within the confines of the contract.
Very good, Ron. Now I completely understand. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No problem. Councilor Brigitte, good question.
That he just had to answer more than what's photosynthesis.
He did. He should get a
really
prize.
did. He should certainly get
Yeah,
a prize for
he
that.
should.
I just want to extend my gratitude and thanks for your volunteerism. That's what the city runs on. So thank you very much.
Happy
for
to
that.
do it.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. All right, that concludes the business.
You want to vote out your other item while you're here?
No, I'll recess and come back, actually.
Okay.
Entertain a motion to recess at 6.
Second.
Thank you, we are recessed 6:55. So that people can do what they have to do before we start in 5 minutes.
So license.
Gotta clean all that. Edibles.
Julie, did you sign it? Yes.
Call the special meeting of the Municipal Council for Tuesday, December 12th, 2017 to order. In a moment, I'm going to ask that you stand and join in a salute to our flag. But following the flag salute, I would ask that you remain standing for a moment of silence. As you came in tonight, you may have noticed that the flag is at half-staff. The reason that the flag is at half-staff was by order of the governor, and it was in memory of Montgomery, Massachusetts Fire Chief Stephen P. Fry, who was killed in the line of duty on December the 6th. So if you would just stand, pause for a moment of silence after the flag salute, I'd appreciate it. So stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Just a reminder to please turn off your cell phone or similar electronic device, as it does interfere with our broadcast to other parts of the city. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting of November 21st, 2017.
Second.
Thank you. The motion is in order. Any concerns or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Let's see. At this time, I'm going to ask, let's see, Mr. Withers, would you read the notice for the special meeting?
Certainly.
And then I'll ask the planning board to join us, please.
November 21st, 2017, two members of the Municipal Council from Frank Cook, Council President. Councilors, by authority of Article 2, Section 2-7C of the Attleboro Home Rule Charter, I hereby call a special meeting of the Municipal Council as follows. Date, Tuesday, December 12th, 2017. Time, 7 p.m. Place, Council Chambers. The purpose is to hold a joint public hearing with the Attleboro Planning Board on Tuesday, December 12, 2017, relative to amending Section 17-3.4, Table of Use Regulations, Principal Uses - Community Facilities, number 11C, under Industrial I and IDP from SMC to S, and to amend certain sections of 17-10.15, registered marijuana dispensary uses, by deleting municipal council and inserting zoning board of appeals and any other matter that may come before the council. CC Mayor Kevin J. Dumas.
Thank you. This time I'd ask the planning board to please join us.
Excuse me.
This is a joint
Thank
public
you.
hearing.
How are you? Hi, Paul.
Hello. How you doing? You guys have a quorum?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Withers, if you would read the notice for the special meeting, I'd appreciate it.
I read the notice.
I mean, excuse me, the call for the
Sure.
joint public hearing. I'm sorry.
It's a joint public hearing with the Attleboro Planning Board relative to amending Section 17-3.4, Table of Use Regulations, Principal Uses - Community Facilities, number 11C, under Industrial I and IBP from SMC to S, and to amend certain sections of 17-10.15, registered marijuana dispensary uses.
Thank you.
Welcome.
As far as the public hearing, I will first ask for those who are in favor of the item before us to speak, then those who are in opposition to speak, and then those who are neither for nor against. Please pick your appropriate area to speak at the time that's called for. Also, I'd ask that if you are speaking, we are not commenting tonight on marijuana. We're not commenting on the recreational or the medical. This is solely on whether or not to be changing the special permit granting authority. So at this time, I would say, is there anyone here to speak in favor? Is there anyone here to speak in favor of this item? Anyone to speak in favor? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Please come forward.
Jeez, he almost.
And again, we need your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. Bill Bowles, 65 Norgate Road, here in the beautiful city of Attleboro. I've come to speak in opposition to this for several reasons. One of the safeguards that I've always thought was a very good safeguard is where you take items that could impact the city that were of a very significant factor, then the ordinances have, I believe, appropriately provided the responsibility on the municipal council to approve these things. And we have those precedent for those items already. Things like the adult video arcades and all of the several adult type establishments, adult bookstore, adult picture theater, paraphernalia, and so forth. And the marijuana dispensaries was another one that this council put in that category because it's new and how it impacts the city could be significant. So I think it was appropriate to make that special permit under the municipal council. In recent weeks, there's been a lot of discussion in other public forums. In fact, there was new business from a couple of the same councilors who are proposing this ordinance change to put limitations on...
I'm sorry, this hearing is only on the special permit process. We're not talking about previous public hearings. As mentioned at the beginning, we are not talking about any of the other, be it recreational or medical dispensary marijuana. This is only on whether or not this should be moved.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to talk about the merits of it.
Well, actually, you were, because you started to talk about the people who brought this one in and that they brought in another one. So I would ask you to please stick to the topic at hand before us. Thank you.
Okay, so let's say the two city councils who have brought this measure to change the ordinance.
Again, I would ask you to stick to the topic at hand.
I am
I do not believe you are.
You haven't heard what all I said is the two city councils brought it in. You don't know what I'm going to say.
I understand that, and you were just talking a few minutes ago about those same city councils bringing in a matter related to this, and you mentioned other public hearings. So at this point, again, I will ask once again you to stick to the topic as to whether or not you believe that this should be put under the Zoning Board of Appeals or should stay with the Municipal Council. It's a very simple question. And that's what we're looking for testimony on. We're not talking about any of the other things or the rationale behind it. We're looking, purpose of the public hearing is to get input in terms of why we should either be moving it over to the Zoning Board or leaving it at the Municipal Council.
I think with all due respect, you're limiting the ability to present the testimony that I think is relevant here. Let me say then that we're in the last month of the term, and the item that's been proposed to be changed was brought in by two individuals who will not be here the next term.
I'm sorry, that has nothing to do with this particular item. It does not matter whether the council is changing or not. We're talking about the city as a whole. The fact of who brought that in is totally irrelevant to whether or not this item should remain under the jurisdiction of the Municipal Council or if it should be under the jurisdiction of the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Well, let's try this then. I think it's not prudent for a council at one of the very last meetings for business that you're doing to change something very significant like this and saddle the future councils and future administrations with it. This is, I think, a very significant piece of business. I think that that if you look at the marijuana dispensaries, I think it's no less important than adult video arcades, than other matters that are being regulated by the municipal council. And I think this would not be a wise move. You have to question is why would the municipal council, as one of their last items of business, be considering making a change to this ordinance when the two people who have proposed it are not going to be here next term.
Again, that is irrelevant to the topic. If you cannot stick to the topic, I will ask you to please sit down.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for coming in.
I have a
Councilor
question.
Conti.
Bill, if I may ask you a question, Bill. You have served, I think, in the seat that I'm sitting as a city councilor. And I know you know the charter very well, and I know you know the rules of procedure for the council. My question to you is that this measure of transferring the permit granting authority from the municipal council to the zoning board of appeals is changing the responsibility from an elected body to an appointed body. And in doing so, I want to know, what is your opinion of your past history with the city, of the impact of and the differences between an elected body and an appointed body?
Thank you for the question, because that was actually something I wanted to talk about, and I guess I got a little off track by the points that I was not able to make. But I think that is very significant. It's one of the major reasons why I would not do this. Right now, the onus on this decision rests with an elective board to make this decision based on all the input that they receive. By transferring this over to an unelected board, and if it's not done consistent with the wishes and the desires of the community, and you start getting calls from your constituents, the only thing you're going to be able to say is, don't blame me, this was done by an unelected board. This was done not by us. If that constituent is astute, though, they would say, but it was you who voted to allow this decision to be made by the non-elected board rather than the elected board. There may be a time with the marijuana dispensaries after after they've been operating for a while to move the control to the zoning board, but it is certainly not at this time. This is something that has been the subject of a statewide referendum, and there's an awful lot of discussion about how things should be done. So this is not the time to change the governing body that decides where these dispensaries go from the municipal council. You were all elected to serve your citizens, and sometimes the decisions are not easy, but I think that they're decisions that you need to continue to make, at least until the city has licensed some of the dispensaries.
If I may follow up. So, Mr. Bowles, would you please elucidate for the public that are listening, what are the differences between an appointed person serving on a board and an elected person sitting on a board? The difference in the roles of the individual serving.
Well, for the city council, obviously, it's elected by the public at large. For the people that sit on the zoning board, Those are appointees made by the mayor and confirmed by the city council, but they're not elected, and there's good reason for that, because they get involved in the technical details of the various proposals, and but the overriding concern is if a council if the council doesn't want to make the tough decision of how these things should be licensed or not, there's always an easy out to say, well, it was the zoning board that did this. But you have the unique power with the vote that you take on this measure to decide whether you're going to keep the control in the body of those people who elected you, or whether you're going to pass it off on to another board.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Lewis and then Mr. Blair.
No, I just want to bring up
Okay,
a
thank you.
point.
All right, Mr. Lewis.
Pardon?
I think you're missing the point. It is a special permit, so it's a zoning decision. It's not a legislative decision. The council is a legislative body. The zoning board of appeals is an adjudicatory body. They listen to the testimony, they find facts, they apply the law, and they make a decision. Now, the way it's set up right now, the council is doing that. The council is not typically an adjudicatory body. They're legislative. The implication in your argument is that if their constituents, somebody gets a call from a constituent, I don't want that medical marijuana dispensary, that they could use that as a reason to vote against it. That's not the way the special permit process works. So I didn't really ask you a question, I made a comment, but I'm wondering whether you really thought through that.
Absolutely, and if I follow your line of reasoning, then we would say, why does the council get involved in approving video arcades? Why does the council get involved in regulating adult bookstores? They have the same basic criteria. There is a set of things that have been deemed to be important enough to let those be decided by the elective body. Yes, I do understand and have thought about the fact that there are regulations that have to be considered, but they're not very onerous, like things that belong in the auspices of the planning board. For example, a site plan that has all this detail. This is pretty straightforward. It can be in a certain zone. It can be so many feet from the residential. When you read through the things, it's not rocket science to understand that.
Mr. Blair.
It seems to me, if I remember correctly, we did go through due process to do an ordinance saying where they could be, where they shouldn't be. Same with adult entertainment. That's in a zone. We didn't want it in a residential zone. From there, it goes to the Zoning Board of Appeals. The law is there for them to act on. I don't think it, well, I won't get into that. But Bill, that was done.
Well, if I read the zoning ordinance, which I have right in front of me, adult bookstore, that is an approval of the special permit by the municipal council. So if what you're saying were true, then it would be, once the council's done their thing, then it would be under the auspices of the zoning board, but that's not the case in an adult bookstore. It's not the case in a motion picture theater. It's not the case in a amusement arcade. So that really begs the question, why take this out of the, is this something that is so significantly less important or less significant than these other items? I would argue not. I would argue that, at least at this juncture, that it's not. It's
Before I recognize Council Hall, just to clarify, for those of you who are new to the city or were not members of either board at the time that the adult entertainment ordinance and special permit was talked about, there was one such establishment in this community. The municipal council did not grant a special permit for that. There was no ordinance in place, and that operation moved into town. And when it did move into town in the late 90s, there was a lot of angst over that, and that led to the planning board, which I was a member of at that time, and the city council to develop an ordinance. And at that time, with the development of that ordinance, that's when the special permit was given to the municipal council. So that was a situation of, so to speak, the barn door being closed after the horse had escaped. So I don't want to be confused that the municipal council in the past had granted a license. Since that ordinance was passed, there has been no such similar organization that has tried to come into the city of Attleboro, in part because there was an ordinance in place at that particular time.
But as you just said, that there was sufficient angst to cause the municipal council to add this to the zoning ordinance so that if it were to happen again, that would be done. And the question I guess I would pose to your body is, do you think that there is less angst with a medical marijuana facility? I rather doubt it.
Councilor Hall.
Yes, thank you. And Mr. Bowles is correct. Actually, when I went through and I did the analysis of this, I went through because I'm in the process of trying to tighten up the RMD ordinance, as we had all suggested, that we found certain things that were kind of confusing. So as I went through and did that, I actually did look at the adult bookstore, and my answer to that was, boy, we probably need to look at this again too and probably do the same thing, is put it to the Zoning Board of Appeals. I felt that at this point in time, because there are processes put in place, that that's something we need to look at. If you go through the zoning book of ordinances, none of us would disagree that you're going to find things that probably need to be changed, and they're outdated. So I don't think that there was any less or more angst. I think it really begs something that we need to look at. It was going to be something I was going to bring up and suggest that we also change that to the Zoning Board of Appeals, because I think that historically we've already gone through this process. The sky didn't fall, if you would. And it seemed that we had, even though we have to tighten some things up a little bit, it seemed that the process that we had went very, very well. And it's something that I feel at this point in time can be, if you would, passed off to the body that we asked to do these things for us. I mean, we entrust the planning board to do all this work. And from somebody who did all this work, and I was the chair of this committee, I had to do all the work that they would have done for me, if you would, or for this council, if you would, all myself, which took an awful lot of my time and effort. Not to say that's not my job, but normally we wouldn't have to do those sorts of things. I'd get a recommendation from the Zoning Board of Appeals. So I mean, that's one of the reasons why I think it's the right thing. I felt very, very comfortable that our process was tight enough to be able to pass that down, and that we had pretty good direction, so that if somebody needed to follow it, that the board that we entrust to do this, which is the planning board, would have absolutely no problems doing that. And again, my comment, you are absolutely correct. And my next thing would have been, I would have asked the council to consider taking the special permitting process from the council for adult bookstores and changing that too, so.
Well, maybe when you do that, I'll be back up for that meeting. But right now, we're here on this meeting, and what you've proposed only is the medical marijuana facility. I think the most significant thing that was said tonight were the comments that President Cook made, was that when in the past, there was significant angst about a particular matter, and the council decided, and I think rightfully so in the 90s, that this is something that we have to have some direct control of, because the citizens are not happy with the way things are going. And it just, to me, appears to be ludicrous that at the beginning of considering how you're going to deal with these medical marijuana facilities, to take that one and only that one out at this time. That just seems illogical.
Are there any other questions for the speaker?
A general question. Maybe I didn't.
Could I have your name again, please?
Jason Gittle.
Jason.
I wish I knew the answer to this. In the city of Attleboro, who grants a liquor store license?
Alcohol and Beverage
The commission. And just follow-up questions. Is that an elected board or appointed board?
Appointed.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Any other questions for the speaker? Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak in opposition? Did you get here's also, by the way.
Good evening. My name is Roxanne Houghton. I live at 13 Eisenhower Street in Attleboro. Here to welcome to Councilor, newly elected Councilor Dolan. My feelings probably aren't as as well analyzed as Mr. Bowles, but I am opposed to the council giving away any of the authority that they have in regards to this matter. I think it is a new matter. I think it's an important matter. And I think that we have just had an election, and I think everybody here was re-elected, and we're looking to you to make these decisions. I want to see what you people are doing on Tuesday nights before the cameras in regards to this issue. One of the reasons, I've listened to the discussions on this, and one of the reasons that I heard was that by maybe taking it out of this particular arena, that it would become less politicized. And that, to me, it was not a good reason. This is a political body. We just had an election. We could not have a more political city, probably, than Attleboro. Everything you do is political. Everything you do, everything you don't do, everything you think is political. So I don't think that trying to take the politicalness out of this issue is a reason to give that authority away. I'm not for the council giving away any authority. I think I've said that many times, but I think this is a very big issue to a lot of people. I think that the city, not to take away from the planning board or the zoning board, but I think that the city council, you're my representative. You're the representatives of the people in this city. And you, being in that capacity, are a lot closer to the people in Attleboro than maybe some of the other boards are. I think we can pretty much all agree on that. This is an issue that's going to impact people's neighborhoods. You're the people that go out at election time and knock on the doors in those neighborhoods and say, let me represent you. Well, that's what I'm asking you to do. People did knock on my door, even though I was running. People knocked on my door. And not one person said to me, vote for me so I can give some authority away to another board. To me, that's not acceptable. And I would take that as a betrayal of the public trust. That's how I feel.
Are there any questions for the speaker? Okay. Thank you for coming in. Is there anyone else here to speak in opposition? Anyone else here to speak in opposition? Is there anyone here to speak neither for nor against? Anyone here to speak neither for nor against? Can we come to the podium, please? Can we have your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Francis Bellut, and I reside at 120 Carrier Avenue in South Attleboro. My concern here this evening is transparency. And transparency, I have gone to AACS as an example, and I asked them if they had ever broadcast, televised their meetings in reference to the Zoning Board of Appeals, because I have on record here this evening that the Planning Board has 9 members, 2 short tonight, and the Zoning Board of Appeals has 5 different named members. The continuing information in reference to the transparency, AACS told me as an answer as to if they had ever televised the Zoning Board of Appeals, and they said, we used to, but there was a member that did not want their face shown on TV. So they stopped it, and there's no longer any televised. So when it comes down to at least having the residents of Attleboro, all the residents of Attleboro, being able to see and be able to talk to a body, it would be the current city councilors at the time. They represent the wards. We have many of you are councilors at large who would take the responsibility of getting a good answer for that constituent. So just on those basis, I would lean towards having the city council do what they do and then pass along their recommendations to the Zoning Board of Appeals. I do have a copy here of the public notice that was published in the newspaper, and I don't believe there are many residents that look through these public notices, and therefore something could get passed that really affected them. So I like the idea of the transparency first of going through the city council. And also, I really don't know what the changes are as I look at this public notice. It refers to amending section 17-3.4, table of regulations, principal uses, community facilities, number 11C, under industrial, IBP from SMC to S, and to amend certain sections of 17-10-15, registered marijuana dispensary uses. I don't know what all those changes are, but I certainly would like to know. And I was going to ask, did any of this refer to recreation marijuana? And Julie Hall confirmed my information to that it does not. So that's appreciated. But aside from that, my general information is that all the residents of Attleboro should have the transparency of being able to go to their ward representative and handle their concerns. Now, does anyone here have a question?
Do you have any questions for the speaker? Okay, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak neither for nor against? Anyone else here to speak neither for nor against? Hearing, yes,
Mr. President, I have a question. May I ask a question through the chair to the planning board? Mr. Lewis, your comments about the adjudicatory body of the Zoning Board of Appeals and the legislative body of the City Council has caught my attention, and it has made me wonder what constitutional right, what governing right set that adjudicatory responsibility and legislative responsibility, and whether or not the council should be given the right for any special municipal council in any zoning ordinance if there is a clear line between an adjudicatory or legislative body. Would you please elaborate on that to give me a little clearer understanding?
Sure. So a whole host of matters come before you. In this particular case, you're bound by the law of Chapter 40A that deals with special permits. Now in there specifically it says that you can designate the council, or the ordinance could designate itself, the zoning board, or the planning board as a special permit granting authority. But when you are a special permit granting authority, you're not supposed to be voting based on whether you think your citizens, who you represent, think it's a good or bad thing. You have to listen to the testimony, understand the facts, and then apply the law to it. And there is specific standards in the ordinance about when you grant a special permit and when you don't. And you have to take those into consideration. So what I was trying to get out of Mr. Bowles was that he was implying that if your constituents don't want this dispensary, that you should vote against it. And you can't do that. You have to vote based on the facts and the law. So that's all. And obviously I think you should delegate it down to the Zoning Board of Appeals. But that's the basis. You have a lot of other things that you do, like when we do a rezoning. That's legislative. We make a recommendation. You don't have to find facts. You basically, it's an up or down vote. On a special permit, you write a decision, and that decision it can be appealed, and it can be appealed based on that you didn't follow the law, that the facts were not the way you found them. So it's quite a bit different. When you're doing a zoning change or a zoning ordinance change, it's legislative. When you're actually granting a special permit, or in the case of the zoning board, a variance, it's not legislative. It's what we call adjudicatory. That's the difference.
If I may. So is it possible for a legislative body to have adjudicatory responsibilities?
Yeah, you do. Right now you have it.
Right.
But all I'm saying, what Mr. Bowles implied, that if your constituents don't want this, that you'd be obligated to vote against it. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to find the facts, apply the law, and then make the decision based on not what your constituents tell you to do. It's a different kind of legal process.
So, Mr. President, this is traveling into some pretty cloudy territory. I mean heady territory. And
heady rather than cloudy.
Right, heady rather than cloudy. Right. It's very clear, somewhat clear, but I want to be sure I really understand that division of responsibilities, and I think I'd like to hear more about it from our city solicitor. So I'm going to ask you to hold the public hearing open so that we can hear from the city solicitor on exactly this issue, the adjudicatory responsibilities of a legislative body.
Yeah, the only problem with holding the public hearing open is I'm not, number one, I'm not sure if, my concern is this: next week is the last regular meeting of this particular term, and with people leaving, we're going to be in the same situation potentially as we are with, because this is a zoning matter with 8 votes. I'm going to ask in a few moments the chair of the planning board as well as the chair of this committee about whether or not they want to keep this open or closed. However, then we have to wait for a decision from the planning board in terms of whether or not this is action they think that we should take. But the chair of the committee can certainly go to the city solicitor, to seek clarification on this matter.
Yeah.
And can we discuss it in a public forum?
Well, when it's in the committee level, of course it'll be discussed in a public forum.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilor Reynolds.
So I just wanted to address kind of what Attorney Lewis had said as well. And I think that by talking about the how did you pronounce that? Yeah.
That word.
So the attorney legal end of it, I would say that we did bring those questions to our city solicitor. So we do both at times, legislative and legal, but we get the opinion of our city solicitor. And so I don't see that, I don't want to make an opinion. What I'm suggesting is that I think it could go either way. And we have to decide as a body, maybe what we've heard out here is, do we want to give up that authority? Because I think we have the authority to do both. We just, when we hit the legal end of it, we have to speak with our city solicitor. So we do have that right to do both. Whether we want to or not is the question. It's not about whether all of our constituents want a certain thing. I think that when we do go out there, it's true, we have to say to them, look, this is what's legal, and we try to find a place that fits for all of us within the city, not just as the elected officials, but residents of this city as well. So those are my comments, and I want you to teach me how to say that word.
Dr. Hall, do you see any need to keep this hearing open?
No.
Mr. Denese?
No.
Okay, so based on the testimony and the recommendation of the chairs, I want to declare this public hearing closed. Is the planning board continuing work?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if you're here for planning board business, they will be meeting in the annex next door. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Is he?
Right, that does conclude all of our public hearings for this evening. At this time, we are going to go on
willing to be a corporator
to
3 years. A corporator, you're a corporator at the Y. Would you be willing? You don't want to do it? I don't think I can. I don't even believe I'm telling you. Okay, all right. So you gave me your answer. Okay. All right. Thank you.
There's no, again, as a special meeting, we're not doing all the things we normally do. All of those back there for the purpose of this meeting is held. There is no mayor's communication, however, there's two items of other communication.
Yes, we have a 2018 renewal application for a Class 2 auto license from R&D Auto Sales, 116 Dickens Street, Attleboro, Mass. For 5 customer parking spaces and 8 display spaces.
License committee, please.
And I'll give some clarification on this. Yeah. When we voted it last week, that was for a new application for the rest of this year, and this is for renewal for next year. I knew someone was going to ask that question, so that's what it's all about.
Excellent. Thank you for that clarification.
I was confused too last week. And we've also received a communication from Linda Blodgett, 21 Prospect Street, Attleboro, Mass., requesting permission to use the dog park with their own lighting until 7 p.m.
Ordinance, elections, and legislative matters committee, please. And I believe a copy of that has already been forwarded along to the park commissioner. Excuse me. The only other, there's 2 other items before us. I'm not going around and getting all the committee reports because last week there was a charter objection involving the sign ordinance. So at this time, I'm going to recognize Councilor Hall.
Yes, for Zoning and Land Use Committee, from the docket of November 22nd, 2016, I move to adopt the following amendment to the zoning ordinance in accordance with General Laws, Chapter 40A, Section 5, and Section 17-1.6, amendments of the zoning ordinance. Be it ordained by the Municipal Council of the City of Attleboro that the zoning ordinance be amended as follows. The petition from Attleboro Planning Board to amend Section 17-10 special regulations by inserting Section 17-16.0 signs with amendments through November 29, 2017. And I think I read the whole thing a couple of times, so I'm asking, can I waive the reading of
Definitely going to waive the reading of that huge document.
I do have one in color, though, if anybody wants to see it.
If anybody wants a colored copy, you can see Hall later.
Thank you.
So, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. The motion is in order. Are there any comments, please?
We've discussed this a few times, and there's been some modifications made to this. So I really don't have anything else to say. I think we're at the point where we either accept it or don't accept it. Go ahead. So that ends my comments.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments or concerns, Councilor Parika?
I have 2. One, does Ms. Dolan need to remove herself?
Yes, she does. Thank you.
Sorry, Laura. Sorry. Thank you for recognizing me, President Cook. So last week we were in a bit of a bind because we didn't have enough votes, and in the foreseeable, I was a no vote for this particular piece of business. And also, if you don't mind me saying, Mr. Delisio as well. And due to the special circumstances that are a part of our council as we speak, where Ms. Dolan is unable to vote on this particular matter, and Ms. Hegney is not available as well. Mr. Delisio and I, who are not on committees together, were able to have a conversation about what exactly it was that made us vote no for this particular ordinance. And I went, on Mr. Delasio's behalf, I went and I met with Gary Arasian and Stephanie from the planning board and had a conversation about what troubled me. And we were able, you may notice that there is new business this evening that changes my opinion, and additionally it changes my support for this particular matter. So I'm happy to say that I will be supporting the sign ordinance for this evening, and look forward to introducing the new business.
Thank you. Any other, Councilor Delacio?
Thank you, President Cook. I echo a lot of what Councilor Parika said. By no means were we trying to be obstructionists with this. We all sit here, we talk about business friendly, the city being business friendly. I felt there were pieces of it that were too restrictive, most notably what Councilor Parika and I spoke about. I think that a sign ordinance needs to be about safety first, aesthetics secondly. I think it needs to limit the time that businesses come down to City Hall, whether it's in front of this body, whether it's in front of the zoning board for a special permit. I think that this shows the willingness of this body to compromise. I think it shows the ability of this body, the Zoning Board of Appeals, the Planning Department to be able to compromise. So I too am now feeling more comfortable with supporting this measure tonight.
Thank you. Any other concerns or comments? Councilor Reynolds?
So this is new business, if I'm correct?
No, this is, right now before us is.
No, is what you, right, but
they are planning to bring in a new business item later this evening.
Well, they both mentioned it.
Right, they're going to bring it in later.
Can I mention it because they're mentioning it?
Yes, you may.
That's what I'm saying. So if that new business doesn't get passed, or everyone else doesn't like it, what then? Is what I'm asking, because there's the assumption that, that's what I'm just asking.
Right, thank you. Can one of you answer that?
Yes.
I think it's a fair question. Yeah, I think it's a fair question, and I think we have to trust in our colleagues. And I think that, you know, as I was a little bit against, last week, still am, I think that we're too eager to revise. It's part of the beauty of the ordinances and being able to. I think we need to get an ordinance on the book which addresses the safety of the signs, as Councilor Cooper brought up last week. I feel that this ordinance would be the first start, and we can always go back and look at it. Although my druthers would be that when we look at the piece of business that we're introducing later, that it would address that. And I would hope that a majority of the councilors would see where it's coming from and what it's trying to achieve.
Councilor Parika and then Councilor Carney.
Oh, thank you, President.
You're welcome.
Ms. Reynolds, great question. My response to you will be that a lot of the discussion with regards to the sign ordinance revolved around our trust and faith in Gary and Stephanie from the planning department, that if we had concerns that they'll come back and we can readdress them. And one of the I'm not sure if you had an opportunity to read.
I did.
So, you know, it's not a huge change, but it was something actually that Councilor Blair and I went back and forth with on the council floor and had a conversation with Gary and Stephanie, and it wasn't something that they were particularly, to quote Stephanie, married to. And again, I echo Mr. Delasio's sentiments that, you know, I feel confident that this is a good piece of new business that shouldn't face a super challenge among the council, and if it does, fine. But I'm still comfortable in the hopes that this piece addresses what one of my concerns was. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, okay. If Gary comes back, if this new piece of business doesn't pass and Gary comes back and we find out that this is a part of why why businesses are coming in and complaining, I'll say, well, we introduced new business. There wasn't support on the council for it, and then we'll end up changing it anyway to be more accommodating to our local businesses. So I'm willing to take that risk.
Thank you. Councilor Conde.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I please just borrow this one? Mr. President, my discomfort is that Councilor Reynolds is correct, and that in the normal order of procedure, at this time when we're discussing this motion, we should just enter this motion as a motion to amend the signing ordinance, so that it can be amended before we pass the ordinance. So that I'll make the motion.
If I may.
Yes.
Just in point of order.
Yeah.
I know where you're coming from.
Yep.
And as Council Pleaker knows, I had mentioned what she told me about, I think it was on Thursday. We happened to be at the same time. She had mentioned she was bringing this into new business. I had suggested that perhaps she might want to be bringing it at this time, but she and Council Delissio, correct me if I'm wrong, had discussed it, and they had wanted to go to the approach that of bringing it into new business after it voted. So that was there, and again, I would defer to either councilor to perhaps, clarify, or if I misunderstood you, clarify it, because to me, that's where that was the approach that I thought. But anyway,
So
but I was asked my opinion on terms of whether or not they should be bringing it into new business. She told me she was bringing it. She told me what it was, and I did suggest why don't you bring it up on the floor, but. Is that correct, Councilor?
That would be correct,
Okay,
President Cook. I felt that with the restrictions, so first of all, so with the restrictions that we are currently experiencing on the council, I wanted to pass the sign ordinance with this particular seated council. I wanted to manage the charter objection, be able to move on the sign ordinance. I was happy to change my vote with regards to that. I did not necessarily feel that I wanted to make a motion to amend and have a significant amount of discussion, and because we will have discussion with regards to this, and I wanted to do it at a more, in what my opinion was, a more appropriate time. I know that I could make a motion to amend right now, but I don't think it is necessary, and I'm happy to move forward with this new piece of business. And while implementing the new sign ordinance, be able to have a conversation with this and have the newly seated city council address this piece of new business as well. Ms. Dolan would then be able to, and the rest of them will be able to weigh in on this matter and be able to review the sign ordinance. They might find something in the sign ordinance that they would also like to make a change to. They might not like this piece of business. Whatever the case may be, I felt it was the simplest manner in which to manage this without a whole bunch of drama, to be truth be told, and to be able to accommodate the passage of the sign ordinance for this evening and move on about our business. And I'm sorry, President Cook, if I may.
Yeah.
And as the person introducing the new business and the one that sat down with Gary and Stephanie, I think it's within my purview to be able to address it in the manner in which I think it best serves the council. And that's really the end of my answer.
And Councilor Coney, if I may, that's kind of like where I left it, because...
Well, somewhere I lost the floor, so I guess I'll relinquish the floor.
Right. Well, I had said actually a point of order on it, but I wanted to, before you brought that in, I wanted the clarification that occurred, because I did want to reassure you and all my colleagues that I had that conversation, but again, this was the approach that was preferred, and I really do not have the authority, or whoever's going to be sitting in, in a few weeks, likewise, I don't have the authority to say, no, you can't do that. So that was the approach that they thought would be, the most appropriate way to handle it, and that's where we are right now. Councilor Delissio and then Councilor Hall.
Thank you.
Oh, then Councilor Cooper.
We're having a discussion about a piece of new business, which we brought in good faith. We brought in through the vein of compromise. I didn't realize that we were supposed to run all new business through you, President Cook, so for that,
No,
I
you don't have to run it through me. No, if I may just clarify, the council president is copied on all the things that occurred during the council, and usually I'm aware of them ahead of time.
Yep.
And that's in the rules of procedure, and it was actually added, just from a historical point of view, for those of you who are still going to be here, it was added because at one point the council president had been excluded from things that were coming in, just as ward councilors were sometimes being excluded from things being brought in by at-large councilors, and that ended up creating problems among councilors with sitting within this horseshoe, and that's why those changes were made into it. So it's not a matter, as I said, Councilor Brady and I just happen to both be here at the same time doing council business, and I think she had mentioned it to me at that particular time that that's what they were going to be doing. And I had said, well, given the fact that you're looking basically to amend it, why don't you just do it on the floor during that time, and she said that, you know, from her discussion, you know, that this was the approach that she wanted to follow. So I let it go at that. I wasn't going, you know, I figured that's the way you guys want to handle it. That's fine with me, and we'll see how the 11 of us all deal with it, or the 9 of us. So, again, back to you, Councilor.
So I wasn't trying to, enough, this is going on and on. So I'm just trying to usher, we want to get this in so we can move along with this ordinance. It was an attempt in good faith to bring about a compromise. So that's what we were doing, and that's what the attempt of this was.
I understand that.
Thank you.
Right.
You have a point of
Yeah,
order.
hold on a second. A point of order. What is your point of order? Just tell me what the point of order is before
Are we supposed to be discussing this on the charter objection, Frank?
What?
This was a charter objection. We're supposed to be discussing this.
That's right. It's
No.
supposed to go right into a vote.
Goes to a
Yeah,
vote.
that's
Into the
right.
vote, yeah.
That's a good point.
That's a good point.
It's a very good point.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've had some common sense. Let's vote on
Hold on a
it.
second. Let me just double check on that. I thought that we had a discussion. Am I thinking of the
No,
reconsideration?
we're supposed to vote right away.
Right into a vote.
Right. Reconsideration, you can discuss.
Remember we had this conversation this afternoon? Were you involved in that?
It was about when it comes out.
We were going over this afternoon.
We can talk about discussion.
All right. I think I have it mixed up with the other one.
We do.
Hold on a second. The following motions are non-debatable. Charter objections.
Yes, I think we have to, there's no discussion, we can go right into the vote.
My apology.
It's fine.
Okay, so.
I just thought that
Well
would end
taken.
it.
So there will be no further discussion, so we are moving to the vote on this. This is on the item that we voted on last week only. Okay? We will have a roll call vote, and the vote will begin with Councilor Delicio, and I should add that this does require a 2/3 vote for passage.
Mr. Delicio.
Yes.
Ms. Hall.
Yes.
Mr. Conti.
Yes.
Mrs. Parika.
Yes.
Vice President Cooper.
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds.
Yes.
Ms. Jackson.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
President Cook.
Yes.
9 yeas, 0 nays.
The motion passes. Okay,
Yay.
thank you. All right.
Where's
Okay.
Gary? Is he
Now,
there?
That was 9-0.
Someone can come back.
Someone can come back.
So she gets, she gets to vote now, right? Good. That's what I was going to ask, and that's what I was going to say. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification, Councilor.
Thank you. No, don't go.
I'm not perfect, but I am forgiven.
Huh?
I'm not perfect, but I am forgiven.
But I'm
Only
sure
one.
as heck gonna miss your wealth of knowledge.
You know, sometimes I get it wrong too, so. There is, the only other item before we adjourn is there is one new business item, and I will recognize Councilor Parika or Councilor Parika. Councilor Parika.
It's co-sponsored, as we all now know, between Mr. Delicio and myself. Motion, I move that the following matter be referred to the appropriate committee for study and recommendation to amend subsection 17-16.10 non-conforming signs as follows. Delete B in its entirety and insert the following. B, restoration. Any non-conforming sign that is destroyed by fire or catastrophe as determined by the inspector of buildings may be rebuilt or restored and shall be exempt from any of the special permit and variance processes under the provisions of the zoning ordinance, provided that, 1, the sign shall be reconstructed or restored on its original foundation or on its original footprint location in the event that the foundation has been destroyed, and 2, the sign shall be reconstructed or restored to its original area, dimensions, and height.
Thank you, the motion is in order. Are there any comments, please?
Yes, so as, I won't rehash all of the other part, but now I can speak specifically to this particular part. When we were having discussion at one of the times about the sign ordinance, this came up, and one of the things that made me uncomfortable is that in the new zoning ordinance, it stated that if there was damage or, you know, if there was a sign that needed to be replaced due to neglect, things like that, there was a 50% threshold that it would have to conform to the new standards. my concern with regards to that is in the event, and we were using the Seabra parking lot sign, you know, if kids are driving by and BB gun it or whatever, and they need to replace it, I don't think that we should, I think that the Seabra should be able to go, order a new sign, and put it back up without having to go through the entire process of getting it, being granted a special permit and having to have it conform. Now, the whole thing about signs is to bring things into conformity. I understand that, but certain circumstances happen on a regular basis as it pertains to these kinds of signs. And I think, you know, for safety reasons and a variety of other reasons, it helps the business person be able to get back into business as quickly as possible without having a 3-month process to be able to put it, and the large expense in having to now conform to the new sign ordinance.
Makes sense.
So I think it's a fair piece of new business, and it's something that made my affirmative vote, you know, the hopes of something like this passing the council made me more comfortable voting in the affirmative for the sign ordinance. That concludes my comment.
Thank you. Councilor DeLucia.
Again, I want to drive home the point that this was about taking care of existing businesses in the city. It's about a compromise. We're kind of in uncharted waters right now with the current situations we're in. It could have been handled as an amendment, could have been handled as new business. I think it's 6 of one, half dozen of another at this point. I think this allows for the new councilors to be able to have a say in this. I think it was a compromise that made me feel a lot better about being able to go forward and vote on this. Thank you.
Councilor Blair.
Just when I thought common sense was dead, this is a common sense.
It is.
A common sense solution.
On tape.
It's on tape.
So I congratulate you both on that. I know I brought up some concern about existing businesses, and I think I brought the average sign at the view, but it's nice to see that common sense is still alive in this country. Thank you.
Say to Heather, say
Any other concerns or comments on this matter?
Merry Christmas.
Oh, thank you. That was the best gift ever.
Councilor Reynolds.
So I just have some issues with the whole thing around conformity. You know, I think that we've done a lot of work on this, and if it went under more than 50%, and I thought that was pretty reasonable. The idea is that down the road, 15, 20 years or whatever, that's what it's going to be. It's not like it's overnight. You know, we want the city to conform to certain rules and have the signs look a certain way. So we don't necessarily want somebody to just keep going back using the old way of doing business, if you will. So, so I might have some issues with it.
Thank you. Councilor Cooper.
So I just want to remind everybody that this is just to allow the new business to go to the committee, how you feel about it, and what your thoughts and feelings, not today.
Right, exactly.
Thank you.
Any other concerns or comments? Okay. This will be a voice vote unless anybody wants roll call. It'll be a simple majority, and again, this is only to refer to the appropriate committee for study and recommendation. Everybody, so yes vote is to move it to committee, and no is not to. Everybody square on the vote? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No? You also, okay. What was that vote?
9 to 1.
There was 2.
Oh, there were 2 hands?
Who voted no? If you voted no, could you raise your hand?
Only I did, I think.
And I did.
Oh, you did?
And I did.
Oh, so me too.
Okay, I didn't know that.
So that puts it at, what's the roll count?
8 to 2.
8 to 2, the motion passed. So I'm going to refer that matter to the Zoning and Land Use Committee. Just a couple of things, just a couple of housekeeping items before we move on. First, apparently there was a problem with some of the emails that went out relative to an event that is going on this Saturday. I know I tried to respond to it, and I had some difficulty when I tried to do copy all, so I'm not sure whose emails are out, but some councilors have informed me that they were not aware of this. So on Tuesday, a week ago, actually, a memo went out to all councilors and councilor-elects at the request of, this came from Gary Oration, the Director of the Department of Planning and Development, writing the request of Mayor Dumas to invite you to attend the rededication of the newly renovated Cyril M. Angel Park located on Park Street on Saturday, December 16th at 11 o'clock a.m. As you may know, Angel Park is named after, we debated this earlier this year, so as you probably all know, is named after Lieutenant Cyril Angel, who was a second lieutenant in the United States Air Services during World War I and was killed in combat in Bougainville, France on May 14, 1918. He was the first Attleboro resident who was serving as an officer to have been killed in that war. And the park was dedicated in honor of him in 1925, and then it was rededicated, I think it was around 2005, I think it was. And now it's on the disrepair, so it's being redone again. It was redone, and we had appropriated money earlier this year, as you may know. So that service is going to be this Saturday at 11 o'clock in the morning up here at Angel Park. And then, if I may, and then shortly thereafter, and I just received this as I was sitting down, that at 12:30 on Saturday here at City Hall, the Attleboro Elks Lodge, number 1014, will officially donate a 2017 Subaru Legacy to the Department of Veterans Services. And again, this came from Ken Badicher, the Director of Veteran Services, at 4:47 this afternoon. That they had just managed to confirm that the vehicle will be prepared, registered, and loaded by then, and everyone involved would prefer that we put that vehicle into use as quickly as possible. So that event will be held here at about 12:30. I want to obviously thank the Elks for their very kind donation. As you know, that van is wheelchair accessible and is used to transport Attleboro veterans to medical appointments in the area. So appreciate that donation, and so I just want to make sure you were all aware of those. Councilor Cooper, did you?
No, I wanted to make sure that we mentioned the second event on Saturday. Thank you.
Okay, good. The last thing that I wanted to just say before we break, we're going to be going into back to the committee reports, and Councilor Dolan will be going first because she has guests, and I know some of the guests are here. But just for my own housekeeping and for tracking purposes, who's planning to cancel their meeting tonight?
Canceling budget.
Okay, let me just, you're canceling budget? Okay.
Public safety emergency manager.
Public safety is canceled.
I don't have anything.
You don't have it, so you're canceling also?
Yes.
All right. Capital improvements, there's nothing you can...
Got an announcement I want to
You have an announcement, okay. Transportation, traffic?
I have business.
City property claims?
I have business.
You're right, that. License, public works, you have a lot. Ordinance, are you having a meeting?
Yep.
You are. License? Yes, and personnel has one item.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so that does conclude the business for the special meeting. I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you, the motion's in order. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. We're adjourned at 8:10. Thank you very much.
Meeting at 8:11.
Do you want to sit up here or do you want to stay there?
I can.
You can stay there.
Why do I have to be?
You don't have to. You can stay there.
You can do whatever you want.
You can stay there if you want.
All this pressure. Do I have a second on that?
You don't
You don't need one. Okay. So let's see. I have one motion this evening. And I have guests as well.
So,
Do you need to-
so what you want to do
Read the
first
motion?
is read the motion. That's what I would do first. Read the motion, get it seconded, and then invite the guests forward to speak, because that's what they're here to speak about.
Gotcha. I entertain a motion to approve the following applications for a 2018 renewal Class 2 auto license from State Line Auto Brokers, 1115 Washington Street, Attleboro. 6 customer parking spaces and 42 display spaces.
Second.
And so I have guests, And I believe we should probably speak to Attorney Casey first. Hi.
Madam Committee Chair and members of the committee, my name is Edward Casey, and I represent State Line Auto Brokers. John Morrell is sitting here. He and his wife are the principals in that business. In 2012, this municipal council issued a Class II license to State Line Auto Brokers for its operation at 1115 Washington Street. And it's been my experience in the times that I have represented auto dealers before the council that I come forward and I make apologies on behalf of the dealer because the dealer hasn't treated the customers in a way in which the customers ought to be treated. This is a different situation. This is a situation in which there is a violation. But I think that it is a type of violation that deserves some flexibility on your part, because what we're talking about is whether this man has too many vehicles that are on the storage lot. I should make note of the fact that I am appreciative of both Councilor Parika and Councilor Dolan for scheduling a meeting that took place, I think, on Monday, December 4th, in order to meet with John and his wife at the site, along with William McDonough, the building inspector, to talk about that situation. I can tell you that John and his wife watched the video of the conversation that took place by the municipal council about his particular operation. And I know that both he and his wife were extremely upset by some of the statements that were made in the course of that discussion. Some of those statements, I think, were grounded in a misunderstanding of what it is that John had applied for. Several years ago, I came before this municipal council and asked for a modification to that Class II license. I think that it was right about this time in 2015. And the result of that modification that was approved by the council is if I may, that this was the plan, 2 pages. This was the plan that was approved. It shows the main lot right at 115 Washington Street, but it also shows a storage lot located on Turner Street. And it shows approximately 55 vehicles. On that storage lot. And it is my understanding, I believe that in the subsequent years, the renewal filing referenced this plan with the 2 pages. Mr. Morrell has been trying to negotiate the acquisition of land on Turner Street where he had been parking those 55 and more vehicles because his business has been successful. He sells somewhere in the area of 100 vehicles a month. Good month, right, John? So he needs an area for the storage of vehicles. Some of the councilors might say, well, Eddie, our ordinance says that you need to submit, in addition to the Class 2 application, a site plan. And that site plan has to be approved by the building inspector. And typically, the purpose of that review by the zoning enforcement officer is to make sure that there is adequate on-site parking for customers and employees. But when I came to the council in December of 2015, I didn't try and distinguish between the main lot and the storage lot. I just said, here's a plan. It's been signed off by Mr. Semple saying that it is in conformity with zoning. And the council said, good, you're in good stead. We find ourselves here tonight because there are more cars on that lot than ought to be there, or there were. Because, John, I'm going to ask you to come up in a moment, and I want you to tell these councilors how many vehicles are now on that storage lot. All right? I'm going to ask you to come right up now. Introduce yourself, and then tell them what you've done over the course of the last couple of weeks.
Hello, everybody. My name is John Morale. Basically, considering the situations that we've had in the last couple of weeks, apparently I ended up removing the vehicles off the premises. Right now, in the back end part of the lot, there's about 6-7 cars that are getting scrapped, but apparently I got, basically I deal with Schnitzer that's scrapping those, but I'm pretty much in compliance at the moment. I'm pretty much, to tell you the truth, I'm probably maybe about 8 cars under compliance at the moment. So
8 cars under?
Yeah, so basically, since I kind of heard that, I kind of did whatever I had to do to make sure that I was in compliance until we kind of figured out everything. So, thank you.
Ms. Dolan? Ms. Dolan?
Oh, I'm sorry. Council Cooper?
Thank you. So, Mr. Moreau or Attorney Casey, either of you, I was there tonight. I drove down Chaudière Avenue along the fence.
Yep.
And from what I was able to see from the plans,
yep.
There are vehicles, likely not yours, they're bucket trucks, vans, tractor trailers, et cetera, on the lot. So the vehicles that are there, those vehicles don't belong to you?
No.
Okay.
No.
Thank you. And so, and you're pretty much, to use your own words, under compliance on what you have been historically permitted for, which is the lot that is on the corner and the plus 55. You're pretty much under.
All right.
You think you're pretty much under the 8.
Yep.
Okay. I like I said, I went there tonight, but there's the gate there. Things were locked off. I saw you guys were selling some cars, so I didn't want to go and disrupt your business flow. But I did circle around and walked around this building here on the corner to see what was going on. But there are so I didn't want anybody to be confused. There are vehicles there, and I wanted you to confirm that those didn't belong to you. At the moment, that concludes my comments. I do have other comments, but I'll hold them until the end.
Councilor Dolan, Mr. Blair has a... Oh, I'm sorry.
It's all right. I'm small.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Councilor Blair.
If I may, you have less than 55 cars, correct, on the storage lot at this particular time? I will make the apology. I haven't been down there personally to look. Right. What is your intention? Is your intention to keep no more than 55 cars on that storage lot?
Sit down. That's a segue into the...
what?
That's the entry into what it is that I want to talk about.
Oh,
because
okay.
I don't want to waste your time.
No.
I don't, at the same time, want to ignore what I think are some compelling arguments for John's situation. I know that all of you have said I haven't heard you say it, Ms. Dolan, but I've heard the others say that we want to be business friendly, but that doesn't mean we ignore our ordinances, but we want to help business if we can. John employs 6, 7, 8 employees. The state gets the benefit of the excise tax. He's successful. You haven't heard complaints from purchasers of automobiles at his location. So he's doing something right. But he needs to get right with you.
So, Ms. Dolan, I do have other questions, actually. I'll wait till he's done passing out, but.
So Mr. Blair said a moment ago, well, what are you planning on doing? That's not today.
Excuse me, Mr. Casey.
There's a lot of cars on that plan.
Excuse me, Mr. Casey.
Councilor Cooper just had before we go on what we want to do next, Ed, could I just ask you two questions? Because I want to make sure that my comments several weeks ago, I was, I think, pretty loud a couple of weeks ago about what I thought needed to happen here, so I want to make sure that I articulate them to you before we sort of go on to what's next. What I heard you say, and I've seen in the documentation back to 2015, is the word storage, storage, storage. So I want to understand your client's definition of storage, number one. Number two, I think that you're right, that from what I've heard, I saw some cars about town with the thing around the license plate that's not supposed to be there when you get an inspection sticker, but it's not put on a lot of used cars and new cars that are sold. And I asked several people, I see you bought a car at State Line, how'd you make out over there? And the response from everybody that I asked was favorable. So I will also, I want to acknowledge the good in some of this as well that you mentioned. So I did some solicitation of people that I saw that were free advertising for State Line Auto Brokers, and I went right up to them and asked them what their experience was like. I didn't tell them why. I told them that I was considering buying from there, and all of the responses were favorable. So I think that I need to, I was vocal last week about the opposition and holding on to this, but I also feel like at this point I have to sort of say something good that I heard about the sales and the feedback that people gave to me when I asked. So, but I need to understand very clearly, because this question was asked of you in 2016, and the answer that you gave was to Councilor Churchill at the time was that this was going to be for storage. So I really need to understand, I think this council needs to understand the applicant's definition of storage.
Mr. Cooper, if I may just have a moment.
Sure. I didn't mean to derail you, but...
The last time I'm going to circulate, okay? This will be the last time.
Thank you. We killed a lot of trees.
Dude.
Did I give you two of those?
Yes, you did.
Yeah, look at you should get two sections of the rules.
I have.
You get that one, and then you need this one.
Thank you.
I got the letterhead.
This is the most recent.
Oh.
You've been looking for that?
The ordinance that governs the license.
This is the last one. I am done.
You promise?
I promise.
Thank you.
Mr. Cooper asked a very good question. What do you mean by storage? John Morale is going to come up here in a moment, and I didn't prep him for this. But I'm going to ask him to tell the truth about the way in which that lot has been used. Mr. Cooper, you were there this evening. You saw that there is a fence. You saw that the vehicles are packed in there. It isn't a location that lends itself for customers to be brought in and to look at the vehicles. His location at 1115 is set up with the lights and with the parking in order to entice customers to come in and to buy vehicles. John, would you come up? Would you answer? You heard what Mr. Cooper said. If you're using it as a storage lot, are you using it for anything beyond storing vehicles?
Just storing vehicles, pretty much. Basically, what we...
Well, what do you mean, pretty much? What is
pretty much?
Well, I mean...
So what happens? If somebody,
Well,
if I show up and I say, I want a 1999 Toyota Celica,
Yep.
and you know that you've got one on that back lot, what happens?
I go get it.
You go get it, but the customer doesn't go get it.
No. The only time that they actually go into the pen, if they do, is probably in that front part of the pen where I store the 55. But besides that, anything that goes in the back, and most of the time we use that back there also because we do quite a bit of wholesaling. We wholesale about 30 units a month. So we pretty much need an area to just put like our wholesale vehicles in the back for. But, you know, I'm not saying that, for instance, if I do have that wholesale vehicle in the back, if somebody comes in on it, I'm not going to go get it. Absolutely, you know.
I think I heard some contradiction.
Yeah.
Attorney Casey. I think I heard some contradiction. I think what I heard you say was that people don't go over there. What I think I heard Mr. Moreau say was that, well, if they're in the pen area, there, you know, I let them go look at it. And
no, that's pretty much the front pen area, not the back.
Right.
So we're only talking about the 55.
We're talking about the 55 car lot.
So how often does that happen?
What, as in what?
Yeah, because Mr. Cooper wants to know, are you using that for the opportunity to show to customers, or is it primarily the storage? Is it 95% storage?
I say it's probably about 75% storage.
Okay. All right, so that's...
So let me just keep going down, keep the train on that track for a minute. That's a problem for me.
Yeah.
Because your application has consistently said and used the word storage, whether it was that language was omitted from your application from time. That was the one consistency throughout the applications, was that once that 55 spaces, storage spaces was approved, it was consistently omitted over the years on the application that was submitted, which brings us to where we're at today, right? So my concern remains, although I'll listen to the rest of your testimony, I have an opinion about what we should do and what I will advocate for, but if you're calling it storage, I'm troubled by the three definitions. Your definition, and my definition of storage. My definition of storage, just so I'm clear to you and all the counselors, is that if you have the 1990, whatever you said, Celica that somebody wants to see, you say, yes, I have that, and you to one of your 8 employees, you say, get the key to the Celica, and the 92 cars you got to move to get, or the 48 cars you got to move to get to it, because you only have the 55 there, and get the Celica out and drive it over here, or say to the person, geez, I can't get it out tonight, but it's got this and this and this and this and this, all the things I think you're looking for, and you can come tomorrow at whatever time's convenient for you. I'll bring it to your work. I'll do whatever I have to do, but I can't show it to you now because the counselor with the bow tie thinks it's supposed to be storage, and I'm letting you walk over there, and we've granted you some relief to let you have storage over there in an area where it shouldn't be allowed without a special permit, and you're not doing what you said you were going to do, my opinion. Yeah. And that concludes my comments at this point.
Okay, sit down. I thought it was storage. And I thought that he sent someone to get the car and to bring it out. I thought that's the way in which it was being conducted. Doug Semple signed off on that plan. And I think Bill McDonough, since he's been here, signed off on that plan showing the 55 parking spaces. When I go through the ordinance, and the reason I gave to you two pages from the table of use regulations, I did so because I wanted to remind you of the types of uses that are allowed as a matter of right. And I went over this with Bill McDonough and with Gary Arasian, and if you were to look at the page 9, down in the lower right-hand corner, it says page 9. It has in that wholesale transportation and industrial section, number 7, motor freight terminal and warehousing allowed as a matter of right in an industrial district. There's no definition for a motor freight terminal and warehousing, but I think one could make that argument that it is for parking of vehicles there as a matter of right. If you look down at 9, it says open storage of raw materials, finished goods. Is it a stretch to say that an automobile is a finished good? Because that is allowed as a matter of right in an industrial district. But in my conversations with Gary and with Bill McDonough, the response to me was, well, Eddie, are you saying that this is a independent storage location that has no connection to the business at 1115 Washington Street? I went, no. So how can you point to a use that is allowed as a matter of right, as a principal use, if what you're really describing is an accessory use? Is this Greek, or is any of it making sense? Because it's an important point.
I'm with you.
Okay. I've spoken with Bill McDonough, and how do I explain that Doug Semple and Bill McDonough signed off on the plan in earlier years, and now look at this latest plan with all those vehicles, and Bill McDonough doesn't want to sign it? It's because zoning stuff can be damn complicated. Mm-hmm. So when I listened to all the public hearing about, shifting responsibility from the council to the Zoning Board of Appeals, I thought that it was sort of an appropriate preparation for this conversation that we're having now, because someone as experienced as Gary, someone as experienced as Bill McDonough, and somebody like myself who's done this for a long time, still, when we look at that ordinance and we try and match up this particular activity, this business activity, and try to find it listed in the table of use regulations, we don't find it. So I said before that I don't think it helps me, and it doesn't help you, if I just come here and give you a history and talk about how complex zoning is. I really need to suggest to you a way to get through this forest. And the suggestion that I will make to you is in the alternative. One is, there is a section under the zoning ordinance. It's section 17.3.1. It allows an applicant to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals and say, I don't find this particular use listed in the table of use regulations, but I would like to get your blessing on it. And the Zoning Board of Appeals will schedule a public hearing, and then there'll be an opportunity for pro and con, and then the zoning board will apply the standards contained in section 17.9.4 and say, yes, you're entitled to the special permit, or no, you're not. If I were to do that on behalf of John Morrell, then he would get right with Bill McDonough, who sent this letter at the end of November saying you're in violation of your Class 2 license, at least with respect to zoning. Doesn't address Class 2 if it's any more than 55. I'm telling you that that's what John Morrell has told me he wants me to do, to apply to the zoning board to get this thing fixed as to zoning. In order for him to stay in business, I would suggest that you approve the Class 2 license showing only the 55 spaces, because we have a history of Doug Semple saying, it's okay under zoning, it's okay under zoning, it's okay under zoning for a number of years. So you're just going along with that. And if you were really generous at this time of year, you might say, you know what, John, as long as you promise to do this, we won't do anything about any vehicles that's sitting over there as long as you don't bring any customers there. While you get zoning relief, if you get zoning relief, you come back in here and we present a plan similar to this one showing an enlarged storage area.
Councilor Cooper?
Thank you. So, thank you, Attorney Casey, for walking us through that. And that is, that's what I would be in favor of recommending to my counselors this evening is because the gentleman is in business. He's been in business, I think you said, since 2012. From what I heard, his business was doing things right from my solicitation of individuals that purchase from him. Where I think he's going wrong is on two potential areas of potential areas for improvement. One is, it clearly says storage, and I think that's why, at the time, you may have been granted some relief from the zoning board, because we found an opportunity to make it fit into one of the areas that you identified in the ordinance. It's in the industrial zone. He was doing it for storage, but he's clearly said I believe at the site visit and this evening, that his definition and our definition, or at least my definition, vary. So I would be in favor of, and in support of approving his license as it was the 42 plus the 55 across the street, amending the license and approving that for 2018 to allow him to remain in business, but he needs to make a commitment that he's going to live by, which is he's going to store on Turner Street and he's going to file for a special permit for whatever it is that he's going to file for. Now, he also had probably there were two different, from what we heard publicly, and we all heard it, there were two sort of different interactions upon arrival of counselors at the location. One from a visit from Councilor Conti and a visit from Councilor Perica. You know, it wasn't until it got sort of noisy here on the council floor that there was any action by State Line, when there were visits from the licensed chair and there were visits from another councilor who offered to help in the absence of the licensed chair that left us to sort of do anything. It wasn't until, you know, we started getting information and some complaints. People called me directly, constituents called me directly, and one came to a meeting to voice some concerns prior to the meeting, that there was sort of any action. And you know, I want to be business friendly, but I also don't want to be taken advantage of, and that's sort of how I feel. You know, with those two things said, I'm good with your proposal of, you know, approving what's there, what he has been in business for. And storage is storage. You know, when my kids say, Dad, what does whatever mean? I say, go get the dictionary and look it up. I don't want to say that, but I'm saying it to you. Like, storage is storage, not showing cars, not walking customers over there, not any of that 25% of the business that's been happening on that lot needs to like cease and desist, and then I would be happy with moving forward with your commitment that you will bring this for a special permit and his commitment that he'll do the right thing on that storage lot. That concludes my comments. Councilor Dolan.
Council Perica.
Thank you, Chairwoman Dolan. I also echo many of Mr. Cooper's sentiments here tonight. I have reservations, and the reasons why I have reservations are the language such as I'm pretty much in compliance. You know, it's either you are or you aren't, because when we hold other dealerships to the same standard, and they are working hard to be in compliance and do the things that they need to do, I don't want to come back here next year and have a conversation saying, right, well, he's not in compliance again, Councilor Perica, because when, you know, when whoever went out there to, whoever the license chair is next term, went out there, counted the cars, they're in violation. We did do this part of it, and we can't, it's not a matter of being able to pick and choose what we want to abide by. We have to abide by whatever comes forth from this council. And what you've been approved for through the planning, through Mr. McDonough. So I need a commitment that it's the numbers are the numbers are the numbers.
Did you hear what Councilor Perica said?
I sure did.
And you heard what Councilor Cooper said?
I sure did.
Right, so if it's a storage lot, it's a storage lot. So if you have someone that's interested in a lot, you're going to need to send an employee to get the vehicle and bring it over, or to schedule a time, okay?
And that's not a problem. I'm just trying to keep it honest. I mean, you know, sometimes what happens is somebody didn't come down on that vehicle, and at the same time we have another vehicle, and what happens is instead of moving 6, 7, 8 cars around, we just go short.
Be quiet while you're in.
We're doing you a solid over here.
No, I know. I put it this way. I mean, I'm just trying to tell the truth. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
And also, if I may redirect on that, and so are we.
Yeah.
We're telling you the truth
Yep.
of what your license is.
Correct.
And that's what you need to, if we're going to be all about the truth,
Correct.
that's what the truth has to be, is what your license is.
Absolutely.
Councilor Reynolds.
So I admire your honesty, even though it's probably driving poor Attorney Casey out of control. But so since it's down in my ward, actually, and because you did have 42 and 55, the issue really, as much as the fact is that you're not in compliance, is that there are a lot of other used car dealers in that same area that the minute they see that maybe you're doing something that that maybe we didn't even notice or weren't paying attention to till all of a sudden we got slapped aside the head and had to deal with it, is that all those other small dealers are angry.
Yep.
They might like you, all that, but they're losing ground because you're getting to do something that they can't. So in fairness to what the committee is saying to you, is that, we just can't do one thing for you. And again, I applaud your honesty. It's almost unbelievable, but it's great that you came forward and said what you're doing, but you do have to stick to what you've been approved for. That's the bottom line.
Absolutely.
Did you still have a question?
I just want to be sure that you're going to stick to that 55 cars that you're allowed. More than 55 till you leave.
Okay, so that's, I asked for more until you get your special permit, but they're saying no.
Okay.
So you're going to have to stick with the 55 till we go to the zoning board.
No problem.
Okay.
Great answer.
Perfect. That was the good answer. That was the right answer. Negotiations, that's the way it works, right?
Councilor Conti.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Maybe as chairperson. John, Mr. Casey, if you'd step away from the podium, please. John, we're charged with granting licenses to people of a proper person. Why are you a proper person?
I don't know. Why am I a proper person? I don't know.
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
hey, I'm just a guy just trying to do the right thing and just keeping people employed. And, believe me, I'm not afraid to admit my wrongdoing. But at the end of the day, if I, from this day forward, if I got to correct it, this is what I'm here to do. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No.
No? Just to clarify, Mr. Casey, also, when Bill went down there, he wasn't in violation for zoning, it was just for his site plan that he had. But, so, in your honesty, you talked about the 42 and then the 55, and, Mr. Casey was asking you about if you have a customer and you get a car.
Correct.
And you're like, yeah, the front pen.
Yep.
So you meant the front pen with the 55, you don't let them behind the front pen of the 55 to the other.
Put it this way, my main lot is pretty much Turner Street, as you could see. You go there at night, everything's lit up.
Right.
We don't really take customers in the pen. Once in a while, and I'm just trying to stay honest. Once in a while we do walk somebody back there, so we don't have to move 10 cars, just so they can look at it. But once they're ready to drive it, they go back to the front. We'll pull the car out and they take it for a ride.
But you're not going to do that anymore.
No, absolutely not.
Because I live across the street, right?
That's all right.
I'm just kidding, I know. I feel the same as far as the 42 and the 55 until he can get zoning relief. And I know Gary, I don't know if Gary's here.
No, he's gone.
But we spoke about it.
Yeah, we spoke with Gary about it. Anybody else have anything else? Any other questions?
Just more of a comment, thank you. I think this is, we talk about being friendly, business friendly, as Attorney Casey alluded to. Whenever we issue a license, it's on good faith.
Right.
And that's really what we're looking for here. What's happening when we're not looking. So I think we're all basically saying, look, we're willing to work with you. We need you to work with us. And if we're going to grant this, and we all appreciate the honesty. We don't want to get in the way of running your business. We're the government. We should get out of the way, let you run your business. But I think Councilor Reynolds brings up such a great point that, if another business says, hey, this guy got away with it for this long, and this guy, so, we just need to make sure that we're consistent and fair across the board. And my biggest thing is this is a good faith, and it's got to go both ways.
Right.
So I'm really hopeful that, Councilor Cooper and the words that you said, I'm 100% on board with. So I'd like to move on so you can continue to run your business, but I'm really looking forward to the good faith.
I appreciate that.
Just one more question. Either one of you can address it. Mr. Donahue went down. They said that cars were parked on a dirt lot. Is the lot with the 55 cars parked now blacktop?
No, and it's not going to be blacktopped. To my knowledge, there's nothing in the ordinance that requires that the parking area be paved. And as soon as we start talking about paving, then anything more than 2,500 square feet triggers a requirement for filing with the Conservation Commission for a stormwater management permit, which may involve then putting in underground storage. And if he was talking about putting junked vehicles that were leaking oil or transmission fluid, I'd understand completely about the importance to the environment. But if he's parking cars that are ready for sale, then I don't see the utility of saying, well, it's got to be on a paved surface.
You handled a typical case of that nature once before, didn't you? We won't go into it, Eddie. I'll retract that.
Thank you, Councilor Blair.
So I think that the paving, there is going to be a question asked, as you are well aware of the conditions of a special permit. One of them is, the environment. You're going to have to answer that question at that time. So, which I'm happy to relinquish to the Zoning Board of Appeals on that special permit application. So, thank you.
Anybody else got? So we were going to amend this?
So you
I would have to make a motion. Am I amending?
to add the 50, it's not on the
Oh, we have to,
original.
oh, that's correct. Okay. So I make a motion to add the, what is the number, 55?
55.
Thank you very much. To add 55 parking spots to Assessor's Plat 3, Lot 66.
For storage.
For storage.
For storage.
The third one.
So the total will now be 110?
No, 42 and
So
55.
42 plus 55.
So the total will be 110?
No.
97?
97.
42 and
Council-
Can you
55.
second
You have to
that?
second the amendment.
Yes. I'm not on the committee. The three committee members.
Who's the
are here.
third?
No, it was, for license, it was Mr. Genley and
No, it's Dolan, Parika, and Conti, the three members of this committee.
the head
I'm
man.
still waiting for clarification. The motion was that he be granted a Class 2 license to sell 55 motor vehicles.
No. So, may I?
Of course.
And please jump in if I'm incorrect here. What was left off the original application,
Storage.
what was the 55 storage spots? So we need to make a motion, we need to make an amendment to the motion to add those 55 spots. It was originally on their application, it did not make its way to the council information.
Okay, I'll second the motion.
Thank you.
Councilor Dolan. Could you just read what that amendment is, because I just want to make sure that we get it onto the motion before it's typed.
So the amendment is to add an additional 55 spaces as storage. So we have 6.
Right.
So
So you just added the words "and" 55 parking spaces for storage?
Right, and I did add the Assessor's Plat 3,
Right.
Lot 66.
That's
So then
not
we're
right.
specific as to the
Plat
location.
Plat 3.
Plat 3, Lot 66.
Lot 66. Thank you.
Motion's in order.
Motion's in order. You can take a vote.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
So we voted on the amendment,
Passes.
now we need to vote on the motion.
Motion.
Yep.
Laura?
Okay, got it. So I'm rereading it as amended. I entertain a motion to approve the following application for a 2018 renewal Class 2 license from State Line Auto Brokers, 1115 Washington Street, for 6 customer parking spaces, 42 display spaces, plus 55 storage spaces. Assesses, so it's Plat 3, Lot 66.
Second.
All those in favor? Oh, you have a comment? Go ahead.
So I think that Mr. Casey and the owner can recognize that, you know, we're working here with you to make sure that you maintain your business. I'm grateful that there haven't been any complaints customer-wise. I think that's terrific. But I would view the municipal council as customers as well. And, you know, at any time, you know, we can take like, I really don't think it would be helpful to you and in your future endeavors to have this kind of conversation again about being in compliance. So please, I'm happy to, you know, vote in the affirmative for this, but I really need to make sure that you understand that the numbers are the numbers are the numbers, and you need to abide by that. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Yes, if I may. I don't feel exactly the same way as my fellow counselor on this committee. I heard Councilor Delicio very clearly last week, and I made my points very clear in the last meeting. I don't believe this applicant has a respect for government and for police power, the police power responsibilities that come along with this license. I don't believe this person is a proper person to receive this license. But I'm voting it to get it out of committee for a discussion among the entire council because I believe the applicant deserves that. I will not be supporting this on the council floor. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn? No, motion passes.
Motion
first.
passes.
Motion passes. So I entertain a motion to adjourn the licenses committee at 8:57. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
It's nice. You're up. Let's go.
I call the Committee on Ordinances.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
I'd like Ms. Dolan or one of the committee members to let the gentleman know what happens from here with this deal.
I'll take care of it.
Thank you. Okay.
I call ordinances, election, and legislative matters to order at 8:58. I'm not going to be voting anything out of committee tonight because they're pretty cumbersome on what we have to talk about. But I'm going to read them both into committee tonight. So from the docket of December 19th, 2017, the annual senior exemption for those meeting income and savings requirements be raised from $600 to $1,000 as a local adoption to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 59, Section 5. This was new business brought in by Mr. Conti last week. I've asked Chief Assessor to come down and kind of talk us through this. Good opportunity to really talk about what this means, what impact will it have. There's a lot of talk about taxes in the city right now, not just because of the potential of a new high school and the debt exclusion, but just really in general. So, Mr. Nasowitz, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me this evening.
That's it. So Sam, thanks for coming down. You know, I know that as Mr. Balut is still sitting in the audience, this is something that similar that Mr. Balut and I have talked about in terms of relief for seniors. Mr. Conti cordially brought this out last week, and I'd love to get your feedback on this as well as any questions that any of the councils have while we have Sam in front of us.
Okay. We talked about this at the classification time, and Councilor Conti brought it in. One, hearing what you just read, I think you want to go a little further and make some additional amendments, but that's your discussion.
Sure.
What I have in front of you, or what I passed around here, is the section that he's talking about, Councilor Conti is talking about, is Mass General Law 59.5, Section 41C, the senior section on the very first page down at the bottom. What we have right now is in 2007, we voted to increase that from $500 to $600, and we give seniors that. And there's two criteria that takes place on that. It was voted to increase the gross receipts up to the maximum, what you can do for gross receipts, but some of the changes that can be taking place now that if we ignored or can do is what Councilor Conti talked about and what we talked about, is you can go up to $1,000 rather than the $600. But the other important part that should be mentioned is the evening I came in, the other thing that you want to put in this amendment, or I think is appropriate, is that you should also reduce the eligibility from 70 years old to 65 years old. All right, you can also do that. Now, to tell you what's existing, it was in the paper, and a number of people asked, how many do we give out? We give out 125 at the present time. When this was first established, we gave out 187. The way the Mass General Law is written is that you cannot exceed that maximum. So they'll only reimburse. Remember, when we do this change, we're going to be responsible for paying the additional $500. Right now, we're responsible. The state only reimbursed us $500 up to 187 applicants. Anything above that comes out of our overlay. All right, so one of the things I will ask you, or I will put forward if we do this, or the council does do this, the overlay will have to increase. It will definitely have to increase. It will definitely, I also believe that if we go to 65 years old, because we have a number of seniors, have to wait till 70. Well, if you go look at the the standards for the income, the gross income. And the other thing I failed to mention, we can also change the whole estate limit. I also suggest that we go to the maximum whole estate limit. Right now, we're at currently $28,000 and $30,000, and I have the definitions. The second page is giving you what the terms of gross receipts and whole receipts are, so you understand, without going into great detail, what those are. But I'm saying what you should do in this change is go to as high as you can go in the, we're already as high as you can go in the gross receipts, but go as far as you can with the whole receipts. And the whole receipts does not include your home. All right, so the home is separate. You know, everybody might be sitting in a home that has a total assessment of, let's just say, $286,000. That's not included in the whole receipt. If they have some other rental income or a second home, that's in the whole receipts. All right. So, I mean, with all that discussion taking place and what will happen, I do believe that we'll hit the 187 easily. We'll be giving out probably an additional, beyond the maximum the state does, we'll probably have to ask for an additional $100,000 in overlay just for this, which I think is worth it. I mean, it's long overdue. And still, I mean, you're going to do as much as you can do under the Mass General Law for the seniors. Yep.
I'm sorry.
Real quick.
I'm sorry.
Stan, can you talk, why would you suggest going to 65? What's the benefit there?
Well, you stop and think about it. I mean, from my perspective, the average individual senior becomes on a fixed income. They usually retire at around 65. All right? Why hold it out till 70? And their income when they're retiring, if you really think about how this was set up and way back when, and those values of whole receipt and the amount of money, a person at 65 years old now and retiring now is, sure, they have a more substantial, we're not going to be giving it to those that retired now.
Right.
But the ones that we're really catering to, that 5-year difference in between, is the per capita income of the city of Attleboro. You know, they don't have a lot of income. And when you start and look at what we're going to do, going up to whole receipts and going up, we're going to pick up a lot more people with the 65. All right, there's that gray area. I see them coming in, and a lot of them come into our office and say, hey, when does it start? At 70. They're coming in, and they're already meeting these guidelines. They're not 70 years old yet.
All right, very good.
So
Thank you.
that's why I'm saying it.
Of course. Council Reynolds and then Council Blair.
Thank you. So how do we let the city residents, 65 and over, 70 and over, whatever we decide, how do we let the applicants know about this program? I mean, there's lots of people, I'm sure, that do not know. What is right now, what is the way that we notify people to let them know that we even have 187 slots?
Well, the 187 slots, what I'm saying, it doesn't matter. If we go, that's where they'll reimburse $500. We go, I estimate we're going to go beyond that.
Okay.
All right. But
do we know?
Notification, most of the seniors, and there's a informational program that happens in the senior center down there. A lot of our programs, the senior work off, the tax circuit breaker, all of that there's an information newsletter that goes out to seniors in that fashion. And I will say that a good number of people come to our office and ask about it. It's known because most seniors are asking, especially since in the state of Rhode Island, they have more exemptions for seniors than we do in Massachusetts. And so a lot of people that move into the area, there is a residency requirement too, which I didn't mention here, but there is a residency requirement of 5 years.
Good.
That sits with it. So you do have to be a resident. We just won't hand it out right away. But there is an informational and so forth, and they come to our office, we let them know. And what have you.
So if I could read it. So we use the senior center. Is there an opportunity that maybe there would be a slip of paper, something that goes out with the tax bill?
Yeah, well, see, you might be able, you could, then you're sending
We
out.
make that decision.
Yeah, you can, I don't.
You don't know. but
I
we
don't
could-
know, and I mean, you could request that, but I think most of it, you're going to be sending it out to a higher percentage of non-seniors that, you know,
But there are seniors that own a home at 65 and older that are out there. I think it's something we could look into. Maybe it won't happen, but it's something we should look into. I have one other question. If 187, we go past that limit, what did we do last year? How many people last year?
125.
125?
125.
But you're thinking we'd go past 187 this year when we only did 125 last year?
Yeah, because we're going to drop the age.
We lower the age.
We're going to lower the age. There's a number of people that have come in that are in that 65 to 70 range that would be eligible.
I would suggest that if we looked through the amount of people in the city, that we could hit 187 if other people knew about it, even at 70.
No. The reason I'm going to disagree with you is because look at those limits that they have to meet. Those limits are very low. So what ends up happening is when you talk to the 65 and that 70 range, that's where I talk about the per capita income. I mean, I hate to put it this way, but, you know, having a gross receipts, your income of $30,000,
I think there's a lot of people on fixed income that it's lower than that. That's my own personal opinion, and from people that I've dealt with in the senior field. There are a lot of older people out there that are collecting Social Security of $13,000, $15,000 a year, and they own a house. That's why they're struggling. That's why we end up in tax title, because they aren't making enough to even pay what their taxes are right now, because they're only bringing in maybe $15,000 a year. So I think there are additional, I think 125 is low, and that there are people that just don't know about it. That's the end. But I appreciate all of this information, because there's some things I didn't know about. But I do think it would behoove us to try to see if we could get it in the tax bill.
I do have a question for you, Counselor. When you ran, you talked about freezing taxes.
No, I talked about proposing it and to see what we could propose in that genre. But my comments to you would be...
No, I do want to ask that question because...
I can wait. I mean, I was thinking next year when we had a new Congress.
But you do want to introduce, it would be special legislation. I'm not questioning it. I think it's a very good.
It's not relevant to the discussion of what
we're doing now. And I think, even to Sarah's point, I think that we can still, this is why I'm not voting this out tonight. There's a lot more that we have to do on this. Council Blair.
I just want to ask Stan, in case I missed this, because I wasn't here when you started immediately. Also, when you talk about income, you're talking Social Security, rent payments.
Rent, yeah. Any income, tax income, interest on bank accounts, bonds.
How about money in the bank?
That's money in the bank counts.
See,
that's whole estate.
I happen to bring a lady in, that's why I just brought it up. Some people may think they're eligible, and you got to add that.
Right, we went over that. We went over it, and she was not eligible.
You did a great job.
Yeah, it's a very important distinction that just because you're 65 or 70 doesn't mean you automatically qualify. There is a whole application process, is criteria which...
To get over that 30,000.
Right, that's where I'm talking about. Those limits...
Great point, Councilor.
They're very old. I mean, and that's why I say to you, even the whole estate, I'm gonna ask you to raise the whole estate up to 40 for single and 55 for married, and that's still not a whole estate, not a lot of money.
Does that include your house, Dan?
Does not include your house.
Estate, though, at 55?
What's that?
Estate?
Estate. If you have a lease, if you have a rental income, something else, a second home that you're leasing, or you're over the limit.
Councilor Cooper.
Thank you. What I do want to go back to of Council Reynolds that I think was relevant, Stan, was I think I've heard Madeline say about 6,000 seniors were serviced by the senior center or live in Attleboro and could potentially be serviced by the senior center. And the 125 that we gave out is about 2% of those seniors are receiving this exemption. When, you know, sort of what numbers do you project this to be? You said $100,000 and additional $100,000 into the overlay, but, you know, what numbers are you sort of looking at if we went with the absolute ideal and your recommended, if we went with all the adjustments here, sort of what number are you thinking would be over the 187 that the state would reimburse 500? Did I make sense?
Right. We're gonna. There's 500 in the one because we're gonna go to 1,000. So multiply that. Let's just say 200 times that right away. We're grabbing that 50,000 right there.
Right.
Okay. And then I estimate that we're probably gonna go to somewhere around 200, 250. Then we're gonna have to grab another $50,000 there. That the state doesn't give us anything on. So that's why I'm estimating $100,000.
I mean, yeah, I think what this is doing to get is actually getting the word out that it's available. Right. Just by way of having this meeting. For those that don't know it, that don't hear it at the senior center, it's certainly putting some, I might get it wrong, but Councilor Conti says it all the time.
Sunlight.
Fresh air and sunlight to the opportunity for for seniors, even given the current criteria that must be met. This is affording them the opportunity that may be watching or hearing about it. So I think that's good, and it's sort of back to Sarah's comment, getting how does the word get out? But I'd really be interested in sort of understanding if there's any analysis that could be done on really who would be affected if we looked at sort of ownership, you know.
Yeah, see,
so hard to do.
Many factors.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, we're not privy to that other than knowing
because of the income and
that,
the money.
Right, the income numbers, and we don't have when they file it to us. I do know that there's been a number of requests of people that are in the 65 to 70.
Yes.
Coming to our window and asking. We have to say it's 70 years old.
Okay.
That's why I say, you know, and you hear some of these things and so forth.
Thank you, Stan.
Councilor Conti.
Thank you. Stanley, thank you for supporting the measure and even going farther. I didn't think that we would, frankly, I thought that if we got the word out that this was available for 70-year-olds with that $40,000 single assets and $55,000 married assets cap with $20,000 income for singles and $30,000 income for marrieds, that if we got the word out, you might hit that 185 in the existing parameter. But there's a couple of things I want to address. One is if you would get back to us with the number of dollars we exempted last year in the last fiscal, I think it's on your LA 13 or LA 15, for all exemptions, the veterans, the blind persons, the seniors. I'm sure that number is somewhere around $240,000.
Up.
It's more than 260,000?
About 380,000.
Wow.
390,000 of the levy capacity goes for exemptions, because what you also don't remember, or one exemption that we also cover in the overlay is senior work-off. We got another 100. But that's in there for
a whole other subject, and that confuses everybody. I want to stick with this senior exemption.
But that's in the overlay. 380 of my.
Yeah. So.
Of the city's overlay.
I'd like to know if we could isolate that out with current senior exemptions. If we could get a number for
Oh, yeah.
fiscal year 16 that we exempted in senior exemptions? Because that gives us a baseline.
Yeah, that's the 125.
125 people.
125 people were last year,
Number of
times the 500.
Oh, that's it. That's a cap. They all get 500.
They all, I'm sorry, 600, times the 600. And the other kicker about that, which the state doesn't tell you, is if you look on the recap, the cherry sheet, they only reimburse you 75% of that.
Yeah. Like the veterans.
Yeah, right. Same thing. They don't, they say you can do this and we reimburse that, but we reimburse it at 75%.
The other thing I wanted to make clear, because this gets confusing to seniors. So I want to state the requirements now so that everybody can understand what the requirements are. The requirements are that you have to have been an owner of property in Massachusetts for 5 years, and you have to have been in a Massachusetts domicile 10 years. So you have to be in Attleboro 5 years, but you have to be in Massachusetts 10 years. The other big thing is that a lot of people don't understand when you apply for this, you have to prove that you meet those income requirements. So you've got to bring in your birth certificates, all your passbook accounts, all your checking accounts, your certificate of deposits, any rental income, statements of Social Security or any other pensions for the calendar year prior, so that the assessing department can vet each application, which has to be signed by the person in person. And it's a 4-page form that they have to fill out. And the assessing department will help them fill it out and will tell them when things are missing. But there are people who apply that don't meet the requirements and they get kicked out of the program.
Correct.
And that's just the reality of the program. The program is very strict that these numbers have to be met or you're out.
Correct.
And you can't lie.
Well, some
we have
people
ways
do,
of finding out that you're lying. So that's also very important to say. This program is one which I think it's time for Attleboro to pick it up. Because our real estate taxes have gone up 4% on average over the last 8 years, it's really starting to affect the people who are on fixed incomes, because they're not getting those increases, and they can see their savings withdrawing, drawing, and they're getting afraid. And what they've realized is that the cheapest alternative for them is to stay in the house that they own. It's cheaper than going into an assisted living facility. It's cheaper than selling the house and going to live with the kids, because you don't know what's going to happen. And I'm so happy to hear the positive comments from all of my councilors, because I think this is, and you, Stanley, thank you very much, because I think this is an important measure for Attleboro. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you for the comments, Councilor. Councilor Hall.
Yes, thank you. And I think it's timely. I mean, a lot of these things we are going to be looking at as we do talk about the school, okay? So this is just one of those things that would also bring some relief. But the one thing that we have to look at, and we have to come up with, and I made the comment when I was sitting with Steve Withers Jr. and with Madeline the other day, is the actual cost, the true cost. In other words, we really got to try to figure out the best we can. You talked about some analysis, what we think the true cost is, because that's going to come from somewhere. So anything we do, you know, we got balance here, balance there. You take from Peter, you give to Paul. We have to find out where's Paul and what that means and what the repercussions of that are. I'm not putting any value judgment on this whatsoever. I'm just saying, so when we do things, we just have to keep in mind as we make these things, because we are going to be asking the folks of Attleboro, hopefully, to make a big contribution in the next few years. So we just need to make sure that we keep all of these things in balance. The other thing that Madeline had suggested is that there are a lot of people out there that won't do it because it's cumbersome, unfortunately, and it has to be done every year. They have to reevaluate every year. They have to do this again. And then there are some people that won't do it because they just abide the old mindset that you don't take things from the government if you can do okay, which is unfortunate. That we do have folks that, you know, get these benefits, but that is sort of a, and she says that there's more of those people than you think they are. So I think it's a good thing, but definitely we need to talk about where the money's going to come from. Where's the offset going to come from?
Well, we know where the offset will come from.
Where?
the offset is going to come out of, I mean, every year, there's no such thing as free cash.
Yes.
All right, and so the overlay on the recap sheet would be increased. Like I said, $100,000. Right now, we sit at $650,000, so we...
But it's up to us as council members that when we do the budget and figure that out, that we find a place to...
No, there's two things. I'm proposing to you tonight, the Board of Assessors has a requirement, a statutory requirement to give to the administration what they need for their overlay. That number, the administration has no control over. We put in the overlay number, and there's where I'm telling you that if you approve this tonight, it's going to go at $750.
I understand that. So it's up to us then. We know that's going to happen, and then somewhere within the movements of the budget then, it's going to have to be some adjustments made to cover this. Yes.
Well, theoretically, let's look at it from this point of view. What's your free cash this year?
Well, I'm just saying, it's not up to necessarily to us to have this discussion at this point.
No, it's not up to you, but I do say, I mean,
it's just a fact. I'm just saying it's a fact, and it's something we'll have to do.
But the administration will understand that they're going to have to work this overlay into the budget.
That's what I just...
What I just said. I'm saying the same thing differently.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm saying to you, it's there. It's there.
Any other questions on this piece of business for Mr. Masowitz? All right, seeing none, thank you for the lively discussion. If any questions come up, please email Linda, get them to me. This isn't something that I want to rush through. I want to make sure we flush it out fully. There are other people I think we need to talk to as well. So very good, thank you. The second piece of business is that all commercial and industrial classification accounts in the city with personal property assessments lower than $10,000 shall be exempt from personal property taxation. Said exemption shall be a local adoption under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 59, taxation under Section 18, exemption under Section 5. Another piece of new business that Mr. Conti brought in, I know back in 2016, we had some lively discussion around this. We moved it, I believe, from 5,000 to 7,500 with the talk of bringing it to 10. So, Stan, if you don't mind just kind of talking a little.
It's 7,000. 7,000. 7,000. Yeah, it's 7,000 right now. It's 7,000 right now. But it was lively discussion. Absolutely, it got moved up. And there was a lot of debate between 5 and 7. Right, on the floor was the 5, and it went to 7. And from the experience of this year, and as in the classification time, it was beneficial. It really was. It's beneficial to the small businesses, and it's beneficial to the taxpayer, because what usually happens with that sum of money, it doesn't get paid, it's uncollectible, and it turns around. The levy capacity increases due to that each year after year. And we probably cut out about $1 million when we did the recent change, and we're probably going to cut out another $2 million by going to 10.
Clarification, that's $1 million value, not $1 million taxes.
Right, no. $1 million value. $1 million value, which, because it's personal property, equates to, for every $1 million, $22,000 in taxation.
Can you talk a little bit about the impact it'll have on the businesses?
Well, it's the large businesses pay their personal property, right. All right? The small businesses, it'll have a good impact for somebody starting out a small business, because that's one less thing. You think about it, if they got $10,000, it may not seem like a lot, but it's
a lot to them.
It's money. It's $200.
Okay, Council Conti, then Council Hall.
Yes, I'd like to pass this on to you, Mr. Chairman. This is a list of all the 351 cities and towns in the Commonwealth and what their personal property exemption is. There is a growing trend in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to exempt additional dollars to raise that threshold because of the burden it pushed on the assessing department. The number of people that are below that 10,000 is much larger than the number of people who are above it. You are much more efficient. The assessor is much more efficient in concentrating on the form of lists that come from those larger companies, that they're accurately assessed and they're accurately, fairly taxed, without having to worry about a used car dealer on Route 1 that's got 2 desks, you know, that not paying his bills. Because the issues that are going on in that personal property in those big companies are big issues and time-consuming issues. And it's got to be done right. So by taking this large number of companies off of the assessor's scope of work, you're freeing up the time to do personal property taxation correctly, and that concludes my comments.
Yeah, and that's what we talked about. That's what it did do. I mean, we took the number of accounts when you made that move from around 700 down to 410, or 411 as I think what we put it. And this will take it down more than likely another 150, which is beneficial.
Yeah, it gives you capacity back.
Gives us some capacity, gives, and as Councilor Conti says, it gives you, especially since we took personal property in-house now to do it, it's given us more efficiency and probably making up that money on better jobs looking at the large taxation in personal property.
Okay, so again, I don't want to speculate where the money comes from or what we think is going to happen. When we do this analysis too, I need to see, or I would like to see, the actual cost it's going to be to the city to do this. The actual cost on both of these things is going to be what we need to see, just for visibility, okay? Because we need to make our decisions based on that, and it needs to be evident. We all know that good things happen when you do good things for other people, but it comes oftentimes at a cost, and that's, we just need to see if we can bear those good things, so.
If I can, I don't know what cost you're relating to. A cost of doing the operation?
No, what you're going to lose by giving. In other words, now there's going to be certain people that aren't, we're going to lose a bit of money in between there because you're going to be raising this property. So some of these people you would have been getting money from. If you haven't been, then it's zero. But I'm going to say that you have been getting some money from these people. So by raising this, that's money that's going to be lost, which means we're going to have to come up with that money too, or that's going to be, it's going to be a loss, basically. I just want to know what that loss is.
I understand what you're saying. I think the last time I gave, and I can go back in the history, I gave you some spreadsheets on 2, 5, 7, and I can dig those back out.
Yeah, it shows the breakdown. And
yeah, of what's in this group and what's in that group. You're right.
Hall's concerns, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you want to email them to either myself or Linda, we can.
Yeah, I'll look for them.
Thank you. Councilor Conti, did you
it may be in the records too.
I just wanted to make a point that those dollars that you're talking about, Councilor Hall, stick to the class. They stick to the class, so it doesn't cross over from commercial, industrial, personal property over to the residential sector. I just wanted to make sure that was clear. Thank you.
Yeah, but somebody's going to pick it up.
And they do.
Who would they?
Well, I think
commercial, industrial.
The spreadsheets that's
Councilor Conti.
That's okay. So that's
hold on,
it's a mix.
Okay.
It would be a mix. 30% of it would be picked up by the commercial industrial, and the other 76% or whatever would be picked up, right? But it's. I'll give you the spreadsheets, but the beautiful part about it, though, is what we touched upon last time. In there is a certain percentage of that just don't pay, and in the end, that flows to the residential. So we're going to stop that.
Because you're chasing down people that aren't paying.
Yeah, and they're not paying, and when they get written off each year after year.
There's a cost associated with that as well. So,
right.
Yeah. Any other questions for Stan tonight? Again, any questions on either of these, certainly let me know. We'll continue the conversation over the next upcoming weeks. Stan, thank you as always for coming down. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great holiday.
You too, sir.
Thank you.
I would move to adjourn ordinances, elections, legislative matters at 9:31.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.
I'd like to call Public Works Committee to order at 9:31. I have several items this evening to discuss with you. on the docket of December 19, 2017, and entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor to accept the revised drainage pipe easement from Cumberland Farms at the 220 Pleasant Street location relative to the vote number 3 from the meeting of June 20th, 2017. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Shannon. Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate that, President. So we had taken this vote back in June of 2017. The easement has been revised and it has been approved to form by the city solicitor, Laura Galvin. Any comments, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Secondly, I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor to appropriate $31,900 from account 6100-359000 Water Enterprise Fund Retained Earnings Account to account 6100-530101 Water Enterprise Fund Professional Services regarding the needs for funds to conduct a mixing aeration study for manganese reduction in Attleboro's Ores Pond.
Second.
Thank you. Anybody know what manganese is? I do. What is it? Manganese. It's a metal that has important industrial alloys in it, and it's very particular in stainless steel. It causes this gray metallic looking color. It's hard and brittle, and it's very difficult to fuse, but it's easy to oxidize. I know all that. That Paul Kennedy is a wealth of knowledge. But the reason that they want to do this study is because they want to continue. We all know that Ores Pond is our primary water source. So we want to continue to have that as our primary water source. So we have to have this study done to see if they can oxidize either by air or by chemicals the manganese in the water. So this study would be done. From there, they'll determine whether it needs to be treated with chemicals or it can just be through aeration. Once that study is done, they'll give us an estimate of what it would cost to actually do that, and that would go into their 5-year capital improvement plan. Any comments, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. I entertain a motion to approve the petition from National Grid, 280 Melrose Street, Providence, Rhode Island, relative to the installation of a new 40-foot pole with anchor and guy wire approximately 71 plus / from pole number 8122 Handy Street for the purpose of extending electrical service to house 156 Handy Street, provided there are no warranted objections at the public hearing to be held on December 19th, 2017.
Second.
Thank you. So we're going to be having the public hearing for this pole to be moved. And the reason that I'm bringing this out of committee this evening is because when we do have the public hearing, by the time we go into our next meeting, we'll have a whole new council that won't be able to all vote on that public hearing. So as long as there are no objections next week, I will be voting this out. Okay? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. I entertain a motion to approve the petition from National Grid, 280 Melrose Street, Providence, Rhode Island, to remove a tree guy wire and to install solely owned pole 1069-50, an anchor to be used for guying on Leewood Lane. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. We had a public hearing on this a few weeks back, and nobody spoke in opposition, so I'm bringing this forward. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. I entertain a motion to approve the petition from National Grid, 280 Melrose Street, Providence, Rhode Island, to install 2 poles with anchors and guys. Pole number 1-64 plus / from pole number 1883, pole number 109 plus from pole 1882, and be numbered 1881 to service lots 4 and 5 on Broach Avenue.
Second.
Thank you. Again, we did have public hearing on this. It was known to speak in opposition. That's why I'm bringing it forward. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. I entertain a motion to strike the following item from the docket of October 3rd, 2017, that a survey of land at 11 Rossman Avenue to determine the property lines. The resident claims that the city paved over his property decades ago. This was new business that was brought in by Mr. Delicio and Miss Reynolds. I have a second?
Second.
I'm striking this because a survey has been done. Both Councilor Delicio and Councilor Reynolds and myself went out to the property. And I know that Public Works has been working with the resident, and I'm not sure about any type of possible litigation yet, but so if this needs to be brought forward again, we will do so. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. I entertain a motion to strike the following item from the docket of February 16th, 2016, that Jones Street and Lee Street be accepted as a city street. This had been brought in as new business from Mr. Denley and myself, Ms. Jackson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Although, oh, wait a minute, excuse me, I gotta explain why I'm striking this. I'm striking this because right now they are doing some work over on Lee and Jones Street. And until we know how much further it's going to go into, because I don't know if that's going into litigation as well. Mr. Cooper, do you know anything about that? We shouldn't talk about it anyways. So we're striking this from the docket until we know further what's going to happen with that street. Thank you, Mr. Cooper.
When it comes before the full council, I won't support striking.
Okay.
Because I think that the issues, as I understood them, were numerous, and they've been maintained as city roads for a long period of time, and this is one of those cases similar to Coleman Avenue extension.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't necessarily see it any differently, and I think that for the people that live there and for the city, we ought to do whatever it needs to be done to survey and get the thing done and get them as accepted roads. And that concludes my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree with some of your comments, but I also know that we're going to have a whole new administration that can take a different look at this and a different approach to it. So I figure it can be brought out again at a better time, probably. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And lastly, I entertain a motion to strike the following item from the docket of January 2nd, 2001, that a street be named in honor of former State Representative Stephen J. Carroll.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you. This has been in Public Works Committee for 20-plus years. So I'm just striking this until we can figure if someone comes up with an idea of a place that you want to name after Stephen Carroll, bring it forward again and we can take a look at it. But with that comment, because I have another one that's in my committee, but I'm not striking that one. I want to come up with an idea for special people of our community, if we want to name something for them. I think we could come up with something, I don't know, like if we put our heads together, not necessarily a plat where all the streets are named after John Lepper and Stephen Carroll and Judy Robbins, but if we come up with something that's real sentimental, that would be kind of cool to do for special people, leaders in our community, or, but I think we'll have to work on that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. I have no further business this evening. I'd like to call for an adjournment of Public Works. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned at 9:40. Thank you.
I have no.
Okay, so I'd like to call City Property and Claims Committee to order at 9:40. I have two motions. On the docket of December 19th, 2017, I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor in accordance with Section 1-12 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro to accept the donation of $200 in Stop and Shop gift certificates from Len Rathbun to the Veterans Department.
Second.
I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but does anyone else have any comments or concerns? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes. I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor in accordance with Section 1-12 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro to accept the donation of $200 in Stop and Shop gift certificates from an anonymous donor to the Veterans Department.
Second.
Thank you. Again, I think it's pretty self-explanatory, and as I had mentioned some time ago, that these are used to help people out that are not have enough money maybe to get food for the week or pay for certain things. And I think it's important that we acknowledge these donations. They're important. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That motion passes, and that's all the business I have this evening for city property and claims. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, and so we are adjourned at 9:42. All those in favor?
Aye.
9:42.
Okay, I call Transportation and Traffic Committee to order at 9:42. We have a little bit of business to discuss here this evening, and I will open it up to my committee members first, but I definitely need everybody's contribution to any of the discussion that we're having today. From the supplemental docket of November 21st, 2017, I entertain a motion to adopt the following ordinance, provided there are no warranted objections at the public hearing to be held on Tuesday, December 19th, 2017. Ordinance relative to prohibited parking on certain streets. Be it ordained by the Municipal Council that Section 10-5.2A prohibited on certain streets as follows. 1. Delete Beagle Club Road, both sides of the entire street, including the cul-de-sac, through January 1st, 2018, with mandatory council review at the second regular meeting of September. And 2. Insert Beagle Club Road, both sides of the entire street, including the cul-de-sac, through February 28th, 2018.
Second.
Nice. Congratulations. That's cool. All right. So, as we've discussed previously, we have the sound down clause that expires on January 1st. My next motion will explain a little bit more about why we need that extension, and it just gives us an amount of time to be able to manage and potentially implement a different parking scheme for Beagle Club Road. But we need a little bit more time for that. Ms. Reynolds,
is it time that I can say something, or
please?
Am I out of control here?
You're fine.
So I'm just trying to understand why we're moving it up a month to February and taking out a mandatory meeting.
I'm happy to explain that. So the mandatory meeting time frame has passed. So that was with the second. There was no specific year added to that. Okay. However, if we do not take action on the sundown clause for Beagle Club Road, it reverts back to whatever parking that was there previous to the no parking. So right now there's no parking allowed on the street whatsoever. If we let the sundown lapse, it reverts immediately back to, I have the language a little bit further down, and no parking on the easterly side up to and including the cul-de-sac all the way down from the gate for the water department and things like that. So I have a plan that we're going to discuss in my next motion to help address some of these parking issues that will give a little bit to this side and a little bit to that side. But I didn't have enough time due to the elections and everything else to be able to put forth the new business, hold an appropriate time for a public hearing, and be able to move it through without it feeling really super rushed. We would have had to have a public hearing as it pertains to a seasonal parking restriction on Beagle Club Road next week. And that meeting is already chock full of a lot of end of year business. So being able to extend the sundown clause, so we're taking that one, we have to extend it, we have to take out the language that's in there and put the new language in. So may I ask you a question? Would it be your preference that Beagle Club Road revert back to its original, because that's
you shouldn't ask me that, because it could really, it's honestly, my people, the people that have been calling me, would love for it to go back to its old way. So I'm trying to understand what the reasoning is. I mean, I get what you're saying to keep the sundown clause, but some of the calls that I'm getting, their concern is that, okay, we're changing this, again, the sundown clause lasts until February 28th, now 2018, and there's nothing there that says we're going to bring it up. And so for me,
we haven't gotten there yet. That's my next motion.
But I think we should do that motion first, or together.
I can't.
So then I can't support this one. That's my problem.
So my request would be, as a committee, potentially that you would move it forward for the full council vote. And this is simply to call This is to call for a public hearing with regards to that. We're not even taking a vote on changing the ordinance yet. We're taking
it out,
so this actually is, it is to approve it without any warranted objection. So I guess the question is, and that was the reason why we were asking for the sundown clause, because what a warranted objection is subjective. And so
I understand what you're saying, but quite honestly, the people that have asked me in South Attleboro, in Ward 1, Ward 2, they would love for it to go back to the way it was. Not your particular Beagle Club Road area, but you know what I'm talking about. And actually some members of Ward 6 have contacted me, so I'm just saying.
That's fine. Well, actually, it's my committee, so I'll call on him, Mr. Cooper.
No, I was pointing back to you. I was throwing it back to you.
Oh, thank you.
So this is for the committee to vote.
Correct.
And we'll have the public hearing next week. And at that time, we can talk about whether there's warranted objection to changing the date. What we're talking about, or what your committee is talking about tonight, is whether or not to have the public hearing to afford those that are calling you the opportunity to come and
do whatever
they in favor or in opposition or whatever. And I think that there were a lot of reasons around timing that when you're, this is one of those things that we added that sundowning thing, and it probably wasn't the right thing to do. And this is, again, the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro for a reason, and this affords the opportunity for the public to speak on whether or not we should allow the time to go beyond the original sunset, and then make a determination, and then get into some of the other business around what should it look like after the sundown is done. We would have something that could be enforced, and et cetera. So I think it's important to get it out to vote, to have the public hearing and move it through the process, and it's a month. And the other reason I think that it's important to sort of wait is that the some of the people that I'm hearing from happen to park across the street from where the new council for Ward 3 lives. So as soon as he's sworn in, I'm sure he'll be hearing from the same people that you're and everybody else is hearing from, and he'll have personal experience because he lives right across the street from where they're parking. So, I think that the conversation will be lively when it happens, and I'm looking forward to some sort of compromised resolution to the problem. And that concludes my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your help with that clarification. Any other additional questions? Delicio, sorry.
I would just add to what Councilor Cooper is saying, if I may, that we've made a lot of progress. And, it seems like every other month this is coming up again. We've got to get something. It's going to be a compromise. And I think we're all pretty much resigned to the fact that we're not going to please 100% of the population. We have to do what we feel as a collective body is the right thing. And I think at this point, extending it out to February 28th at this point, I don't think it's really going to impact it one way or another. So, but again, this piece of motion is just a piece of business, just to vote in the public hearing.
Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Councilor.
President Cook. Sorry.
That's right. No problem. Could you just clarify for the audience and for all of us, the purpose of the public hearing next week is solely about moving the date. Not talking about the parking on both sides of the street.
Correct.
Right? So that everybody's clear about that.
That is.
All it is all we're doing is whether or not people think we should move it or not move it.
Correct.
And of course, if they're not going to move it, then the question comes up, okay, we vote not to move it, then what does that mean?
Then everything reverts back.
Then it reverts back what it was. So, okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, again, for that clarification.
So your clarification, can I ask?
Ms. Reynolds, sure.
So the clarification of that means that if people come to the public hearing, they'll be there to only oppose this February 28th date.
Right.
Or agree with the 28th date.
Correct, and they would be limited to what they could speak with regards to. That's
the reasoning for not wanting to do so.
Correct.
Okay, that's all I do. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Apologies if I was not clear on my outset. I was a little anxious about this little piece of business, so I might not have been as clear as I could possibly have been. Any other additional questions or concerns from anyone? I move for a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes, so we will have a lovely public hearing. Let's see. I entertain a motion to hold a public hearing on Tuesday, January 16th, relative to amending section 10-5.2A as follows. 1. Insert Beagle Club Road, easterly side from 20 feet northerly of the West Street to the Water Department Emergency Equipment Access Gate. Also see section 10-5.15, seasonally prohibited on certain streets. Beagle Club Road, westerly side from the Water Department Emergency Equipment Access Gate, southerly for a distance of 100 feet. Also see section 10-5.15, seasonally prohibited on certain streets. And insert the following new section, 10-5.15, seasonally prohibited on certain streets. Parking upon the following streets or highway or parts thereof is hereby prohibited during the dates described herein. Beagle Club Road, both sides of the entire street, from dates to be determined right now through and including dates to be determined by us of each year. Second. Thank you. So, this nice little tidbit right here. It would insert into it, we would revert after the sundown, or the public hearing that is scheduled for the January 16th is to discuss two parts. One, we would have to insert a new section into the ordinance book that would pertain to seasonal parking restrictions. We don't have, this is the first time the city of Attleboro would ever do this. I've thought about how it would be implicated in other, we had discussed in other areas of the city. I had lengthy discussion with the Traffic Study Commission with regards to that as well. This is a piece of business that would allow individuals that would like to have direct access to Manchester Reservoir. There's a period of time in which they would be able to have that direct access, meaning parking on Beagle Club Road. But then at the same token, it would allow, it would continue a parking restriction through a set dates in that location. So the request from the residents in that location has been anywhere from April 1st to November 1st, where you can't park on the street at all from April to November. I've had multiple discussions with them about reducing that. And, you know, as we have all said repeatedly, there is no perfect answer to this parking situation down there. I've had assurances from the police department that their level of enforcement at that location will be maintained. It gives individuals who are looking to utilize or to access Manchester Reservoir from Beagle Club Road, even though there are other access points that they could use, they would have that direct and immediate access multiple months during the year. But during that very specific time where we've had a very challenging, where it's been very challenging and a lot of different kinds of activity, and I'll just leave it at like that we're all very well aware of, have taken place. So it provides that security and protection for the neighborhood still. Everybody still has access for fishing and passive recreation to Manchester Reservoir. It will it will change where you'd be able to park. Through my discussions with Lance Hill and now with Ron Dubuque, you know, the DPW's ability to line the street, put up signs, so everyone is perfectly crystal clearly well aware of when you can park there and when you can't park there, and exactly where you can park and where you can't park. It's very clearly shown on the street. So like we can put, you know, lines out on the street, because there's, you know, when you come down Beagle Club Road, there's a little bump out there that the street narrows, and so we do, you know, during the periods of time where it's not the seasonal restriction, you'd be able to park there, and it causes safety concerns. So then through lining and signage on the street where you're able to park, it's going to take a lot of work from multiple departments to make this happen. I know that there are individuals that want direct and immediate access 100% of the year on Beagle Club Road. Unfortunately, as things are right at this very moment, and that neighborhood still needs to heal and repair from the trauma that was put upon them for so long. This is a great interim way to do that. So then your early spring fishing, your fall time fishing, you'll be able to do those kinds of things, or whatever the case may be. You'll still be able to do that. The neighborhood is still sacrificing the ability to park on their own street, to be able to protect the safety and the integrity of their neighborhood. I need individuals who want that, who are loudly advocating for direct access to Beagle Club Road, to be compassionate to the neighbors in that location. The neighbors are also sacrificing a lot in their own neighborhood. With a parking restriction means they can't park there either. So there is no simple solution. When we discuss it during traffic study, Detective Blackwell's like, we've been talking about the same thing for 10 years. It's been 10 years we've had this same problem. Nobody has come up with a fresh approach. Nothing has, like, we're just struggling to be able to, and this is the freshest approach that we've been able to come up with, where it gives a little on both sides. And so, again, I'm hoping that my committee, and I'm opening it up to everybody, I would like your input on dates. Several of the neighbors that I've spoken with, again, they want April 1st to November 1st, and I told them that I didn't feel that was something that would pass the council. I think that's something people, when the springtime comes, they come out, they want to start fishing, then walking their dogs, things like that. So if we bump it, my recommendation was May 1st to sometime in mid-September. The request again was till November. I said I didn't really feel that was something that was reasonable and that we could roll it back. When I've had other discussions with residents there, the activity at that location once Labor Day passes drops. I mean, we still have those nice warm days in October where people are going to be out there, but they would have that very clearly, the lines on the road and the signs telling you where you can and can't park. So then we're not encroaching on the neighbors' driveways, and we're not parking next to the fire hydrant, and we're not, parking halfway up the gate. It's very clearly laid out right there on the street where you can and where you can't park. And if there's no parking available, keep on moving. And if we can time limit it. I can happily take a motion to amend and say that we could time limit those parking spots if we wanted to. But then again, that puts an additional restriction on the neighbors when they have the ability to be able to park on their street as well.
Enforcement.
I'm sorry?
And enforcement.
And enforcement. It would make it very challenging as well. Ms. Jackson.
Excuse me, thank you, Council Preca. So you're just asking for a public hearing in January, tonight?
I'm asking for that, and I would like it if we could have a discussion on dates, if anyone has anything particular that they would like to hear about.
Mr. Cooper.
So I think that we are asking for the public hearing, and we should hear from the public on what they think are appropriate for dates, and then we should
discuss it.
So my concern with regards to that was when we advertised for the public hearing, it was my understanding, and please, President Cook, correct me if I'm wrong, it needs to be kind of laid out very specifically on what we're holding the public hearing on and the dates. So I would need the dates to be in there. President Cook?
Thank you, Chairman Praker. And also that last line where you have from XX through and including YY, you can't advertise it that way. You need very specific information and dates in terms of what you're really looking at here, so that public knows when they come in, what it is. So whether that's something that you discuss, now, but you definitely have to have that information clarified before you advertise, and that advertisement would probably be going in somewhere around January the 2nd, I believe.
Correct. Long before we have before we'd have another meeting.
I mean, that's for the one. If you have
the dates, I would like to make at some point this evening, I would like to make a motion to amend this so that we could put the dates in.
Got it.
I'm sorry, Councilor Hall and Councilor Delcio.
Yes, is it possible to get some historical data from the police department, just for some reference points as to when they started getting complaints? in the past and when they stopped getting complaints, just to get sort of a time frame of when it really might have been causing some difficulties. Is that possible?
Sure. I believe that we have had that information. When we passed the sundown clause, we had that information that was disseminated by the police department with regards to that.
Resurrect it.
I can happily resurrect that. But again, it has been, when it was the Beagle Club, when it was the, the soccer club, this has just been a chronic condition that's taken place. So it's really, it's been forever.
Yeah, so there's probably a pretty good idea of when that when that happens.
A minimum of 10 years. Mr. DeLucio.
Thank you. I think that we have the opportunity to put time in, and believe me, and you know as well as I do, that people will tell us what they feel at the public hearing, warranted or unwarranted. I think we've talked about this so much that I would be in favor and I would support. I would take the lead of the ward councilor as well as yourself, Councilor Parikh. But I think that May through even October 1st, I think would be fair.
That's what I was thinking.
Because, the reality is a lot of the shenanigans were taking place after the sun went down. And once you get into September, sun goes down earlier, it gets colder earlier, and I think that a lot of that would be kind of pushed to the side. I do think that this is probably something a little different than we've ever seen in this city with this type of legislation. I think that it shows a willingness, again, to compromise, which seems to be the word of the night.
How refreshing.
It certainly is. And I think that the other thing it does is people use Manchester all year round. People walk their dogs in the snow, they run the trails in the snow, they fish. So I think that, I would support May through October 1st.
Councilor Dolan.
I agree with Councilor Delicio. I think May through October, I know people use it no matter what the weather, even when it gets chilly, but I think that May through October would give someone more of an opportunity for nice weather, to not be completely, phased out of the summer, because May's warm, October can still be warm. So I would agree with May through October, definitely.
I walk until the lip gloss freezes. After that, I take a couple days off and go back out. So
Right,
I keep
but
going.
at least people would have the opportunity, for people that don't want their lip gloss to freeze, to go in May and October when it's not lip gloss freezing weather.
The restriction would start May 1st.
Right, well, it's better than April 1st.
Right, exactly.
In the way I feel.
Is the
Councilor Reynolds.
restriction suggesting the parking? That's the restriction, right? So I would throw it all the way to June 1st, to be honest with you, because now you're letting the people that normally wouldn't get to use it. You're saying June 1st through September 30th, which are really good months that everyone else in the city won't be able to park there. So that's 4 full months, and it's when everybody's out of school. It's when it's the most crowded, June, July, and August. But it still leaves most of the city, all of April, all of May, all of October, and all of November. You're splitting the 8 months that the residents had asked for and giving them 4 good months and giving 2 months on either side of that 4 months to everyone, to be inclusive of the city. Will everyone like it? Probably not, but it would be, you'd be hard pressed to say you're not getting something, because you are. Even the ones that want to be there, they're fishing, they're getting all of April, they're getting all of May. And as far as just the lip gloss not freezing, you've got October and November. But you're giving the very best months really to those residents, which is all of June, July, August, and September, which is when I think the most problems arose down there, is during the good months, the summer months. And that's all I have to suggest. Saying June 1st to September 30th.
Any other comments? I'd love to hear some more comments.
I'm sorry.
Oh, Councilor Conti.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Councilor Reynolds. I was thinking May 15th to September 15th, because you want to cut out Memorial Day weekend and Labor Day weekend. Those are the 2 big problems. So if you went May 15th to September 15th, you kind of like, you hit that tightly, more tightly, and that concludes my comments.
Let me just write that down. From May 15th.
May 15th to September 15th.
Yep. And so again, I just need to highlight this. People still have access to Manchester Reservoir. This is about direct and immediate parking. That's it. It's not that people don't have access. It means they have to walk a quarter mile to get there. I just want to just highlight that portion. Mr. Cooper.
So I think...
I'm so sorry. To September 30th or September 1st? 15th. My apologies.
5/15 to
Got
9/15.
it. Got it. Thank you. Mr. Cooper.
So I agree with Councilor Conti. I think, as a compromise that seems to work, and then let's hear what people have to say. I can tell you, when my phone starts ringing is when the seniors get out of school, which is about mid-May. That's when my phone starts to ring, because that's when the nonsense starts. They're out of school and they're swimming up at the reservoir. I think that this is reasonable, and we'll see what people have to say about the dates that we propose, either in favor or opposed, or have any other difference of opinion, and we can consider those and amend them at that time. But I, have no objection to May 15th to September 15th as suggested by the
Okay.
I agree. I agree too.
Great. So for my committee, I would need someone to make a motion to amend my little motion here.
So I do make a motion to amend from May 15th to September 15th.
Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Second amendment.
I think I seconded. I can't remember.
No, sorry, I'm sorry.
Made the motion.
My apologies. I actually have it down. Okay, so I have it down that Laura seconded it. So.
Thank you.
So just 1 second. I'm just getting my notes down. So then I would have to vote on the motion as a whole then, correct? Yes.
As amended.
And I would like to take a vote on the motion as amended, Beagle Club Road, both sides of the entire street, from May 15th through September 15th of each year.
Second.
Any comments? All those in favor? Aye. I did.
Aye, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate the discussion. We've all worked very hard and have managed different discussions with different residents with regards to that. So I look forward to the public hearing on June 16th. And we'll be able to hear from everybody. June 16th, heaven's sakes. January 16th. One other piece of business, and I don't know where my little letter that I showed you went.
I gave it back.
I know you did. During the Traffic Study Commission last night, we discussed the solar flashing warning sign for County and Reed Street. It's important for you to know that in 2013, the Traffic Study Commission did write a recommendation to put in to reduce the speed limit to 35 miles an hour and to insert that sign. We did one. The other one fell through the cracks. So that's already, is that it? It is it. Look at that. I put it right in front of me so I would know. Excuse me. So the very kind Walt Orris, who is on the Traffic Study Commission, brought me the minutes from November 20th, 2013. The attendees ex officio were Lieutenant Tom Dion and Councilman Walter Thibodeau, and the voting members were Joe Caponegro, John Clover, Brenda Haskell, and Walt Orris. So items from the City Council. So this was referred to the traffic study for a recommendation back. I do have to just double check the minutes from our subsequent meetings, but it is my understanding it was voted in the affirmative by the Municipal Council that Reed Street, County Street intersection. The following recommendation was passed that a flashing warning signal be installed in each direction on the County Street approaches to Reed Street, 2 total signs, and that the speed limit on County Street for the entire segment from Rhode Island Line through Reed Street intersection be made 35 miles an hour. They've already made a recommendation with regards to this. So we'll move, once I find out the minutes, we'll do the right things to be able to move along and be able to follow through with their recommendation. We were fortunate enough, Lance Hill, his last day was on Friday, so best wishes to him on his future endeavors. We had Rhonda Butte back, like what's old is new again. The sign, Ron is back. So I'll be bringing that back out again and showing that recommendation and being able to move forward with that. Great. All right, that concludes the business for the Committee on Traffic and Transportation. I call for an adjournment at 10:11. All those in favor? Aye. And we are adjourned. Thank you.
No, I have, are you done, Richard?
No, I'd like to call my Capital Improvement Committee to order at 1:13. I have just 2 announcements, and I should close by 10:15. I attended the Municipal School Building Commission meeting last week, and they are having a meeting tomorrow night to decide on which direction they're going to go on the bids for the library, which came in Friday. So that's a big meeting, but unfortunately I won't be there because at the same time, there's going to be, and I'm inviting everybody to attend, a tour at the Attleboro High School Wednesday, December 13th at 6 p.m. And it's going to be conducted by the school's business manager and controller, Mark Furtado, as well as the facilities director, Jason Parento. And they're going to discuss on the assessment of the current building that was done by Castel Booz as part of the process in this whole thing with the school. And I'm inviting the entire public to attend. They have a capacity of 95 attendees. And it's a worthwhile, if you are questioning the condition of the Attleboro High School, this is a must-attend event. And that concludes it. Everything else, by the way, is going along nicely with one exception. The Massachusetts School Building Administration submission of what's called the Form 3011, that's the form that they send to the, so that they can decide what they're going to fund and what they're going to exempt. They're very important. That's been delayed, and that's why the vote is being delayed past March 9th. They're still negotiating some of the items that are on that list, but what they're negotiating is peanuts compared to what the project costs. So it's important to get every dime you can, but there's an expense to it, and that's all the business. Do you have any questions about what's going on? Okay, then I will call, as promised, to adjourn the Capital Improvements and City Development Committee at 10:15. Motion's in order. All in favor? Aye. So be it. Thank you both.
Thank you. I call Personnel and Human Services back to order at 10:15. From the docket of December 19th, 2017, I entertain a motion to confirm the appointment of Wendy Foster of 48 Sandalwood Drive to fill an unexpired term on the Attleboro Council on Human Rights, term to expire February 2019.
Second.
Thank you. We all got the notice. She's very interested and very qualified for this appointment, and we'll vote it out of committee, vote it next week, and then bring her back to be introduced to the community, to the new council. Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Thank you. Motion passes. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn at 10:16.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned 10:16. Yeah. Thank you.
Are we done?
A 1-minute meeting.
A 1-minute meeting.
Thank you all very much. Here.